commander at the Cape. Amid the daily bustle of trade, the tree's quiet grace belied something, the grim transactions beneath its shade. For here, enslaved people were bought and sold as property. Hello Philip, and welcome back to Lost History Files, and to a special mini-series we're calling Lost South Africa Files. In it, we uncover the stories, conflicts and voices often left out of the mainstream Cape narrative, revisiting the forgotten moments that helped shape a nation. As we begin another journey into a hidden past, I invite you to support the channel. Please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next chapter. I always enjoy hearing from viewers, including your suggestions for future episodes, so please leave a comment below. Also, a quick note to acknowledge that names in this video are pronounced differently across South African communities. In this episode, we turn to a subject as sensitive as it is necessary, asking questions that no serious analysis of early European colonization at the Cape can avoid. Why were slaves brought to the Cape? How many came? Where did they come from? What lives did they lead once they arrived? And what do the archives tell us about those who were freed, and what they went on to achieve? Stay with me as we open the Lost History File on the Forgotten Slaves of South Africa. Our story begins on the high seas, magnificent, majestic, a floating fortress of trade and of terror. This is Batavia, a replica of the ships that once carried Dutch ambition to the far corners of the globe. Every polished beam, every billowing sail speaks of mastery and might. But behind the grandeur of these VOC vessels, icons of empire and commerce, lies a darker truth. Many also carried human cargo. A Malagasy slave's oral testimony, recorded by a French explorer in the early 19th century, recalls, "The ship's hold was dark and suffering. Many did not survive the journey, but I promised myself that if I lived, I would remember the names of those lost." It was Van Riebeck who set the whole enterprise in motion. He quickly realized that one crucial element was missing in the effort to build a sustainable colony: labour. European servants, imported at great cost and requiring wages, were deemed too expensive. Some colonists even complained they were too idle. Early proposals to bring in Chinese workers, as had been done in Batavia, modern-day Jakarta, were scrapped. The cost of transporting them proved prohibitive. And so came a fateful diary entry by Van Riebeck, dated April 1652. "We shall herewith apply ourselves to procure some slaves, as well from Guinea as from the East Indies, so that we may be able to carry on our work and culture here." Many historians regard the early Cape Colony as a slave society, so extensive was the reliance on forced labour. And it's hard to disagree. The VOC built its colonial foothold largely on the backs of enslaved people, who worked not only in households and fields, but in building the infrastructure of colonial Cape Town. When Van Riebeck left the Cape in 1662, the colony's population comprised 134 officials of the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, 35 freeburgers, 15 women, 22 children, and 180 enslaved people. By 1800, roughly 90% of settler farmers owned slaves, with around 30,000 enslaved people living at the Cape. Yet to truly understand this, we must see it in a broader context. Yes, a slave society. What's sometimes overlooked is that it was part of a global system of slavery. Across the Indian Ocean world, in Africa, the Middle East, and across South and Southeast Asia, slavery was widespread and deeply rooted long before the arrival of European powers. Slave trading in this region dates back at least to 2500 BC. Babylonians, Egyptians, Greeks, Indians and Persians all traded enslaved people across the Indian Ocean, and at times across the Red Sea. Enslaved Africans were moved across the Sahara and along the Swahili coast into Arabia, Persia and Mughal India, and in many of the very regions where the VOC later sourced slaves for the Cape. Madagascar, Mozambique, India and the Indonesian archipelago, local elites and trading networks were already deeply involved in systems of slavery and bonded labour. Cities like Istanbul, Cairo and Zanzibar were major hubs in the global slave trade. Between the 16th and 18th centuries, North African Barbary pirates captured and enslaved over 1 million white Christians from coastal Europe. King James I of England received frequent petitions from anguished families pleading for the release of loved ones taken and sold abroad. And within Africa itself, slavery was not a foreign imposition. It was deeply entrenched. Kingdoms such as Dahomey, Oyo, and the East African sultanates relied on enslaved labour for domestic service, ritual sacrifice, and commerce. Captives from inter-African conflicts were routinely sold into both the Atlantic and Indian Ocean slave markets. If we're looking with our modern sensibilities to pass judgment, none of this exonerates the VOC. The Dutch, like other European colonial powers, did not invent slavery, but they eagerly exploited the systems they encountered. At the Cape, enslaved people endured harsh conditions, brutal punishments, and legal subjugation. And yet, as we'll see, some among them, remarkably, found a path not only to freedom, but even to prosperity. Who exactly was enslaved at the Cape? Not the Khoikhoi or Sun. For legal and practical reasons, the VOC employed them as labourers, but not as slaves. Dutch law discouraged the enslavement of indigenous peoples unless captured in a so-called just war, and the VOC was keen to preserve trade relations with the Khoi, particularly for cattle. Moreover, both the Khoi and Sun were highly mobile and resistant to control, making them difficult to confine or coerce into stable, long-term labour. And in a clear division of empire, the Dutch West India Company, the GWC, claimed exclusive control over the trade routes of West Africa, including the immensely profitable Atlantic slave trade. So instead, the VOC turned to the Indian Ocean world for its supply of slaves, importing men, women and children from Bengal, Batavia, Madagascar, Mozambique and Angola. These regions, incidentally, are the origins of many of the earliest Asian settlers at the Cape, not to be confused with the Indian community in KwaZulu-Natal, which traces its roots to the 19th century, when the British brought indentured labourers from India to work on sugar plantations. South Africa's Cape-coloured community, meanwhile, emerged from generations of mixing between indigenous Khoisan peoples, enslaved Africans and Asians, and European settlers at the colony. On the 28th of March 1658, the first slave ship arrived at the Cape. It was the Amersfoort, a Dutch vessel that had intercepted a Portuguese slaver en route from Angola to Brazil. From its grim cargo of 500 souls, the Dutch seized 250. Many died during the crossing. Some were sent on to Batavia, and 75, 38 men and 37 women, were brought ashore at Table Bay. 21 men and 22 women were assigned to the company gardens and fields. The remainder were divided among VOC officials, their lives absorbed into the machinery of the colonial frontier. Weeks later, in May, another slave ship, the Harselt, arrived from Grand Popo on the West African coast, part of modern-day Benin, an unusual gift from the GWC. Aboard were 228 newly enslaved people. Van Riebeck described them as exceptionally handsome, sturdy and cheery. 80 were sent on to Batavia. The remainder were auctioned off beneath the slave tree to freeburgers and VOC officials alike. Many would not survive the harsh conditions. Disease and despair claimed them quickly. They were to be taught farming and trades, not out of kindness, but out of economy. Slaves were cheaper than settlers. The Cape could now grow without the financial burden of European hired hands. Later, in 1679, the VOC built the Slave Lodge to house up to 500 enslaved people, living in overcrowded conditions. The lodge was constructed by the VOC to house enslaved people owned by the company itself, not private settlers. These VOC-owned slaves were used primarily for public works, roads, fortifications, drainage and construction, serving in the company gardens, working in the company hospital, kitchens and workshops, and acting as porters, artisans and domestic workers in VOC facilities. Today, the Slave Lodge stands as a museum and visitor centre, dedicated to preserving and sharing the stories of those who lived there. Ryclof van Hoens, a high-ranking company commissioner, instructed van Riebeck to treat us well. In fact, the VOC issued several formal edicts regulating the treatment of slaves, including one in 1731. While these standards were relative and limited, excessive cruelty was officially condemned. Council of Justice records show that some settlers were prosecuted, and in rare cases even sentenced to death for killing slaves. One such case involved a farmer named Jacobus Coetzee in 1775, though his death sentence was ultimately commuted. Where was the Dutch Reformed Church in all of this? In the Dutch Republic, the Synod of Dort in 1618 forbade slavery within the Netherlands itself. Anyone legally entering Amsterdam was automatically a free citizen. As a result, VOC officials returning were technically barred from bringing their Cape slaves with them, though some found ways to bypass this rule. At the Cape, however, there was little outright church opposition to slavery. Instead, the church focused on the socialization of freed slaves through baptisms and marriages, based on the principle that slaves converted in servitude ought to enjoy equal right of liberty with the other Christians. The expediency of the DRC, and more widely the colony, also led to a tolerance of Islam as an alternative faith among slaves brought from the Malay archipelago and East India. Islam was officially discouraged, but it was recognized that Islam taught obedience to masters and forbade alcohol, values aligned with the Cape's interest in control and order. When the British took over in 1806, they were dismayed by how widely Islam had spread among the slave population under Dutch rule. The British abolished the slave trade at the Cape soon afterwards, though slavery itself continued until 1838. But that's a story for another episode. By the late 17th century, the Cape had evolved into a regulated and stratified society. Men were divided into distinct groups: European colonists, including bureaucrats, burghers and boers, company officials and employees, slaves and free blacks or khoikhoi, each with varying degrees of wealth and power. Women were similarly categorized, though VOC officialdom remained exclusively male. Some historians draw a direct line from these early social divisions to policies of. Others argue there was more social mobility than commonly assumed, suggesting the early Cape divisions rested more on legal status than on skin colour. Whoever is right, acts of resistance to slavery were frequent, as VOC court records reveal. Crops mysteriously caught fire before harvest. Some enslaved people feigned illness or deliberately slowed their work. Running away was always an option on the vast open veldt, though soldiers and burghers were regularly sent in pursuit. One frustrated slave owner wrote, "These people still believe they will reach some country where they will be freed, but they may expect nothing else than to be destroyed miserably by hunger, wild animals or hostile natives." And indeed many runaways met such ends. Yet some found entry in the caves of Table Mountain, surviving with help from local coastal communities who provided fish and other means of support. But the most famous episode of resistance was a mutiny at sea. In 1766, the Mermen set sail from Madagascar, carrying a human cargo of enslaved men, women and children destined for the Cape. But somewhere off the southern coast of Africa, those enslaved rose up, overpowering part of the crew and ordering them to steer the ship back to freedom. But the Dutch tricked them, feigning to turn around, but instead quietly sailing towards the Cape. Days of tension, hunger and confusion followed as the mutiny unravelled. The crew threw bottles into the sea in advance, bearing news of the mutiny, so that when the Mermen finally ran aground near Strathspey, soldiers swarmed the beach. The surviving Malagasy were recaptured and shackled once more. Their bid for freedom had ended in shipwreck and silence. Today, the story of the Mermen lingers as one of South Africa's most haunting maritime rebellions. In its aftermath, VOC officials were so impressed by the testimony of the rebels' leader, Masavana, that they commuted his death sentence. In the remainder of this episode, drawing from VOC records, let's give names, voices and stories to more enslaved individuals like Masavana, who are perhaps too often reduced to numbers. Katerina Antonis van Bengala is one of the most remarkable from the earliest years of the Cape Colony. She holds a unique place in South African history as the first known slave to be freed at the Cape, and as the first person of colour to marry a European settler. Katerina was among a handful of slaves already at the Cape even before the Amersfoort cast anchor in Table Bay. Few enslaved people kept their original names. Many were given new ones, months of the year, or classical and biblical names. Because many names were reused, toponyms were often added to indicate a person's place of origin. In Katerina's case, Bengal. The VOC slave registers list many individuals bearing the name Van Bengala. She was freed, made a Vrije Zwartin, a free woman of colour, in April 1656, by her owner Dirk Sarserius of Batavia, so that she could marry a Dutchman, Jan Wouters. Soon afterwards, she was granted permission to marry, and on Sunday, May the 21st, 1656, she and Jan were married inside the Castle of Good Hope. It was a moment of quiet historical significance. The first documented marriage at the Cape, and in fact the earliest marriage of any kind recorded in the colony. Van Riebeck's journal marked the occasion, noting that the assistant Jan Wouters was married to the honourable young maiden Katerina Antonis from Salagon in Bengal, formerly a slave girl. She was now a Christian, baptism being at this time a necessary gateway into settler society, and as the wife of a VOC official, Katerina was welcomed into the small circle of the Cape elite. She dined at Van Riebeck's table in her husband's absence, and was treated with the same respect as the 6 other white settler wives. Her skin colour, it seems, was no barrier once she had married and converted. But life soon took a harsher turn. By 1657, her husband had begun drinking heavily and was accused of speaking ill of Van Riebeck and his wife. Punishment was swift and severe. Wouters was stripped of his rank, made to beg for forgiveness, and sentenced to exile on Robben Island. Katerina, heavily pregnant at the time, inspired enough sympathy that some of the penalties were dropped. Nevertheless, she soon found herself living in bleak isolation on Robben Island, raising her child among exiles, slaves, and windswept sheep. By 1658, Van Riebeck lost patience with Wouters' behaviour and ordered the family deported to India. And so Katerina, the first freed slave, the first to marry a European settler, vanished from the Cape records, her trail ending not with glory, but with quiet exile. Aboard the Amersfoort, the first slave ship to dock at the Cape, was Angela van Bengala. Angela, later affectionately known as Mai Anciella, became one of the most prominent early enslaved women at the Cape. Like Katerina, her journey began far away, in the lush and distant Ganges Delta of Bengal, where she and her companion Domingo, along with 3 children, were likely captured by slave raiders. Transported first to Batavia, they were purchased by VOC commander Peter Kemp to serve as his personal household servants. The story of Domingo is murky. Some historians believe he was Angela's husband and father of her children. Others argue he may not have been a man at all, but rather a woman, perhaps another enslaved companion. The Cape records offer little clarity. What is clear is that Angela and her family were sold again, this time to Jan van Riebeck and his wife Maria, as domestic slaves. When van Riebeck left the Cape in 1662, he sold Angela to Abraham Garbermer, a VOC official, and when Garbermer prepared to return to the Netherlands in 1666, he freed her. Angela was manumitted, liberated from bondage. 2 years later, in 1668, she was baptized as a Christian, completing her formal transition into settler society. In 1669, she married Arnoldus Barson, a Dutch freeburger and man of property. Over the next 2 decades, the couple had 6 children and began building a life together in the expanding settlement. When Arnoldus died in 1689, Angela became a widow, but not a destitute one. He left her 6,500 guilders and a substantial plot of land on Herengracht, today's Adderley Street. As a former enslaved woman and now landowner, she became the first woman at the Cape to hold land in her own name. Angela was more than a symbol of survival. She was a force of nature. Over the years, she doubled her inherited wealth, expanded her holdings to include a small farm, and lived well into her 70s. Her life, however, was not without sorrow. Her son-in-law, Olaf Berg, was imprisoned. One of her sons, Jan van Aars, was executed for violent crimes. Another son, Jan Barson, caused scandal with a widow, resulting in an illegitimate grandson who was later banished from the Cape. Yet another grandson was sent to Robben Island. Still, Angela endured. She died in 1720, not as the enslaved girl from Bengal, but as a respected matriarch, wealthy, independent, and deeply woven into the fabric of Cape society. Through her 6 children with Bani, Angela became the foremother of thousands of South Africans. She is remembered not only for her remarkable ascent, but as the matriarch of the Bani family in South Africa, a woman who transcended bondage and left a legacy still felt today. Anna de Koning arrived at the Cape as a child born in slavery, her future unwritten. But she would rise to become the mistress of one of the Cape's grandest estates, Great Constantia. Born around 1656 in Batavia, Anna was the daughter of Angela van Bengala. Her father remains unknown, lost to time. Anna's beauty and poise did not go unnoticed. She is the only known enslaved person from the early Cape period to be immortalized in a portrait, a symbol of her remarkable journey. In September 1678, she married Olaf Burke, a Swedish-born VOC official and a favourite of Governor Simon van der Stel. It was a union that would bring both triumph and trial. Burke rose quickly through the ranks, celebrated for his loyalty and skill. With it came wealth. He owned Great Schuur, the official residence of the Prime Minister of South Africa until 1984. But in 1687, suspicion fell upon him. Accused of hiding treasure from a shipwreck, he was imprisoned, first on Robben Island, then in the castle. And with him went Anna, loyal through his disgrace and exile. In 1690, Burke was released and given the opportunity to start anew in Ceylon. Anna followed him once more, returning close to the lands where her mother had been enslaved. They came back to the Cape in 1695. Burke, now restored to respect, purchased Great Constantia in 1712, the grand estate formed from the division of Governor van der Stel's lands. There, Anna became its mistress, a former enslaved woman, now at the heart of Cape high society. Together, Anna and Olaf had 12 children. Their lineage spread wide, their legacy still felt today. Burke died in 1724, but Anna lived on, adorned in jewels, respected and wealthy, choosing never to remarry. She died in 1734, a widow, landowner and matriarch. Abraham van Batavia was one of the first enslaved people brought to the Cape from Southeast Asia, likely from present-day Indonesia. We know little of his early life, but what makes Abraham's story memorable is that he became another one of the first enslaved individuals at the Cape to be freed and to go on to acquire land. His freedom may have come as a reward for long service, religious conversion, or simply because the VOC saw value in creating a small class of freed men who could serve the colony in other ways. Abraham married, had children, and began to build a life as a free burgher. He worked as a tailor, a skilled trade, and became a respected figure in the early free black community. His story is less dramatic than some, but it's still revealing, reinforcing the impression that from the earliest years, slavery and freedom coexisted at the Cape, and that some individuals, through resilience and luck, could navigate their way from one to the other. That pathway was exceptional, however. For every Abraham, there were hundreds who remained in chains. And freedom didn't always heal the mental scars. As written by one 18th century freed slave in Cape Town, "Though my body is no longer a slave, the memory of chains haunts my every step. Freedom here is not the freedom of the mind." Antony was a slave who likely arrived at the Cape early, in 1654, though no official record marks his arrival. The first, and sadly only, mention of Antony comes from Jan van Riebeck's journal on March the 12th, 1655. On that day, van Riebeck noted that Antony had disappeared, and he suspected that the Khoikhoi were responsible. The journal entry reads as follows: "It is now several days since we first missed a certain Madagascar slave, and we do not know where he has gone. He disappeared quite suddenly in the morning, the day before yesterday. On a few precious occasions, when any of our men had absconded, we had them brought back by the Khoikhoi for a small piece of tobacco, but they have not been willing to go and look for this slave, though we promised them not only a large amount of tobacco, but some copper to boot. This makes us suspect that they killed him, the more so as this slave was always fighting with them. What became of Antony remains a mystery. Was he murdered, or did he find refuge on Table Mountain? Whatever his fate, this single journal entry stands as the only trace of his existence, a brief glimpse into the harsh and uncertain world of the early Cape Colony. Finally, Eva, also known as Krota, was a Khoi woman, not a slave in the formal sense, but her life was deeply shaped by Dutch colonial power. As a girl, she lived in the household of van Riebeck, where she became fluent in Dutch and Portuguese. She served as an interpreter between the Dutch and local Khoi leaders, including her uncle, our Chuma'o. She converted to Christianity, took the name Eva, and married a Dutch surgeon named Peter van Meerhof, another early recorded marriage between a European and an indigenous woman at the Cape. But Eva's story is tragic. After van Meerhof's death, she struggled to find a place in Cape society. She was later imprisoned, declared insane, and died in disgrace. Her children were taken from her and raised in settler households. Eva remains one of the most gifted and poignant figures of the early Cape. Jan Brein was her son. Against the odds, he too rose in colonial society and became a landowner. But the shadow of Eva's life, her rise and fall, always hovered over him. The slave tree in Cape Town was cut down in 1916, and its stump removed in 1951 in order to widen the road. Today, the former site of the tree is a notable landmark on the Cape Town Slave Walk. An octagonal memorial stands there, inscribed with the words, "On this spot stood the old slave tree." Fittingly, perhaps, it stands on a traffic island, trafficked humans remembered amid the hustle and bustle of the city. The memorial stands on Spin Street, but whilst we can put it in context, we can't put a spin on slavery in South Africa. Like enslavement worldwide, it was exploitative and dehumanizing. What we can do is acknowledge not only the vast majority who suffered and died as slaves, but also those who, like Angela and Abraham, broke free, whose resilience some had transformed their Cape of Chains into a Cape of Good Hope.
Yes, there you have it. Slave history, the hidden history of South Africa. Yeah, man, you're still watching and listening to Bani Daily Life podcast, and this is Bani Kandondo. But today, man, I'm not even. I'll be bringing you a lot of history. You understand? There is the Huguenots at the Cape. I think this is also relevant. If you would like, please take a seat and enjoy.
Commandos, peacemakers, and presidents. South Africans of Huguenot descent have undeniably made their mark. In every era, they've shaped the country's political life, sometimes divisive, sometimes transformative. Yours. From the theatre stage to the theatre of the heart, they've influenced South African culture, deepening its understanding of human affairs. Their faces adorn stadium banners. Their grit is in the nation's DNA. Sportsmen filled with South African and Huguenot pride. A scattered tribe, a lasting legacy. Hello, I'm Dr. Philip, and this is Lost History Files. If you're enjoying this channel, please remember to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. And do drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and keep the conversation going. In this fourth episode, we continue exploring the Europeanisation of Southern Africa, turning the spotlight on a remarkable group of French Protestants who arrived a generation after Jan van Riebeck landed at Table Bay in 1652. Why did the Huguenots come? How did they adapt, and what is their legacy today? Stay with me as we open the Lost History file on the Huguenots at the Cape, 1688 and beyond. First, where does that curious, evocative word, Huguenot, come from? Well, the answer is disputed. Some trace it to Besançon Hugues, a leader of Geneva's Reformation movement. Others to the German Eidgenossen, confederates bound by oath. And for the superstitious in France, Huguenot was a ghost said to haunt the city of Tours, a jab at Protestants meeting in secret after dark. Whatever its true origin, one thing is certain. Huguenot became a badge of honour and of persecution. The Huguenot legacy at the Cape begins earlier than is often appreciated, with Jan van Riebeck's wife, Maria de la Cailleraie, herself of Huguenot stock. Her presence in a position of visibility and influence may just have subtly prepared the ground for later arrivals. That said, as we'll see, the Dutch East India Company's support for Huguenot immigration was driven less by sympathy and more by pragmatic economic and colonial concerns. But to understand why these immigrants came to the Cape, we must begin in Europe. 17th century France was a land of grandeur and glory. Under Louis XIV, the Sun King, France stood at the pinnacle of European power, militarily formidable, culturally dominant, and above all, spiritually unified. But that unity came at a price. For over a century, France had been home to a sizable Protestant minority, the Huguenots. To be a Huguenot was to follow the teachings of John Calvin, a rigorous, scripture-centred faith that emphasised discipline, personal conscience, and a direct relationship with God, unmediated by priests or popes. The Scottish reformer John Knox called Calvin's Geneva the most perfect school of Christ that ever was on earth since the days of the apostles. That vision of a virtuous, godly society resonated across Europe and far beyond. It made a lasting impression on the Reformed Protestants who, driven from France, eventually found refuge at the Cape. In France, the Huguenots had endured decades of uneasy tolerance, civil war, and annihilation. The most infamous episode was the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre of 1572, during and after which Up to 30,000 Protestants were slaughtered, 3,000 in Paris alone. Many fled the country, and it was during these French wars of religion that the word réfugié was coined in French, meaning someone who had taken refuge. The English word refugee was first recorded in 1628, directly shaped by these events, when Fulk Greville, the Elizabethan writer and statesman, wrote of the settling of Huguenot refugees in England in his Life of Sir Philip Sidney. In 1598, a glimmer of hope had arrived when French King Henry IV issued the Edict of Nantes, granting limited religious freedoms in a desperate effort to secure peace. But peace in France was rarely permanent. By the 1680s, Louis XIV viewed religious uniformity not merely as a virtue, but as a necessity for his absolute monarchy. In 1685, at Fontainebleau, he revoked the Edict of Nantes. Overnight, Protestant churches were closed, schools shuttered, and pastors exiled. Huguenot laypeople faced three grim choices: convert to Catholicism, worship in secret, or flee the country. Many who stayed were killed or sold as galley slaves for the French and Turkish fleets. In 1985, President Mitterrand of France issued a public apology 300 years on from the revocation. Do such gestures carry any weight centuries later? The most feared tactic was the dragonade, the forced billeting of soldiers in Huguenot homes to harass, intimidate, and coerce conversions. It was spiritual warfare executed through the machinery of the state. Thousands were arrested. Children were torn from their parents to be raised Catholic. Many Huguenots went underground. Others fled for their lives. Tragic in any circumstances. But these were not peasants or serfs. They were skilled artisans, farmers, doctors, and scholars. In driving them out, France expelled some of its brightest minds and most industrious hands. Around 200,000 Huguenots fled to Protestant lands: the Netherlands, England, Switzerland, Prussia, and as far afield as North America and Brazil. A much smaller number boarded ships bound for the distant Dutch colony at the Cape of Good Hope. The Cape was remote, but it was Protestant and Dutch, and for the faithful in exile that was enough. It was the Dutch East India Company in 1687 that granted them refuge. The VOC, ever pragmatic, saw an opportunity. Here were hard-working, devout, and desperate families, perfect for strengthening the fragile colony on the southern tip of Africa. They didn't accept just anyone. Stringent rules were applied, starting with a compulsory oath of allegiance to the Netherlands. The newcomers were expected to bring valuable skills, particularly in wine production and farming. In return for the enticing promise of 60 morgen of land, over 100 acres, they were required to spend at least 5 years in the fledgling colony. This land grant was substantial, large enough to support vineyards, orchards, or a mixed farm. It's one reason why the Huguenot contribution to Cape agriculture proved so enduring. Less well known is the fact that the VOC made an earlier attempt to recruit Huguenots, but this was largely unsuccessful. In 1671, 21-year-old François Bastion from Armentières became the first Huguenot refugee to arrive, but there were few others at this stage. However, as persecution against Protestants in France intensified, the second recruitment drive, bolstered by the promise of more land along with Freiburger status, saw a much better response. The main exodus of the Huguenots to South Africa did not, as is often believed, occur solely between 1688 and 89, when nearly 200 arrived. Rather, their migration unfolded over more than 3/4 of a century, a steady stream of refugees fleeing persecution. While state-subsidised immigration ceased in 1706, the flow of Huguenot settlers continued for decades, their contributions to the Cape's development enduring long after the formal relocation efforts ended. Still, The total number of newcomers was modest, compared, for example, to the 50,000 plus who found sanctuary in England. So it might surprise some that the Huguenots have left a significant genetic imprint on South Africa. As mentioned in an article by the Huguenot Society of South Africa, research suggests that their descendants make up around 24% of the Afrikaner gene pool, more than any other non-Dutch heritage, including German, Scandinavian and Flemish, as well as smaller proportions of Asian and African ancestry. If you're South African, have you had your DNA tested, and if so, what were the results? Do drop a comment below. Through this influx of Huguenots, the Cape, originally intended as a mere provisioning stop for Dutch ships, became something far greater, a beacon for those who had lost everything, a refuge where faith, land and hope could take root once again. But just getting to the Cape was an ordeal in itself. It's December 1687, more than 2 years since the chilling effect of Fontainebleau. A literal chill wind coils through the narrow streets of La Rochelle. Families pack what little they can carry, Bibles, heirlooms, seeds and memories, for their leaving. Not for adventure, not for commerce, but because they must. Hunted by a state that once promised them protection, only to tear that promise apart. And so they board ships. 4 months at sea, malnutrition, sickness, storms. Some never made it, but others stepped ashore at Table Bay, weary but resolute. Much like the Puritan immigration to America across the wild Atlantic, surviving the journey itself became a sign of providence, reinforcing their sense of being a chosen people. It was an image that bred resilience and at times a certain stubbornness, even obduracy. Religious conviction and a vast untamed land have always been a potent blend. Among them were names that would one day be etched into South Africa's history. Leroux, Labashonga, de Villiers, du Plessis, Malan, Joubert, Marais, Pinard. Equally significant, for they were freely chosen, were the Christian names they brought with them. François, Pierre, Etienne, Jacques, André and Louis. Names that remain widespread and cherished among their descendants today. Notable early Huguenot settlers included Jean de Long, known for helping establish early farms in the Cape region, Etienne Rousseau, an early winemaker and farmer, and one of many Rousseaus who contributed to South Africa's viticultural development, and Guillaume Dutoit, who established wine farms in the Paarl region, and whose family name remains prominent in South African agriculture and winemaking. François Retif was an early settler linked to farming success and an ancestor of Piet Retif, a key figure among the Voortrekkers. Paul Roux was a farmer and religious leader who contributed to the early spiritual life and governance of the French community. The Freetown state of Paul Roux was named after his descendants, and Jean-Pierre du Plessis, whose descendants include numerous South African cultural and political figures. At the Huguenot Memorial in Franschhoek, many of the names of the early Cape Huguenots, and the ships that carried them, are engraved on a sundial. Fittingly, the sun pointer bears the Vaudois Latin motto, Post tenebras lux, light after darkness. They were few in number, but their impact was lasting and profound. In April 1688, the first ship, the Verschutten, dropped anchor in Table Bay. On board were nearly 24 Huguenot families, weary from the voyage but unbroken in spirit. 8 more ships would follow. By the end of 1689, over 180 Huguenots had arrived at the Cape. Free passage was granted by the VOC, and upon arrival, they were given land, implements, seeds and tools. Then they were escorted to their new farms. But many soon grew dissatisfied with the quality of the soil and petitioned Governor Simon van, the man who gave his name to Stellenbosch, for permission to relocate. Van der Stel eventually agreed. It's worth noting that in 1691, a Huguenot settler, Pierre de l'Olive, assisted van der Stel in establishing the Cape Colony's first formal land grants, a foundational act that still echoes today in South Africa's ongoing and currently highly topical debates about land expropriation without compensation. Most of the newcomers were eventually settled inland, among and just beyond existing Dutch farms, in a fertile region called Drakenstein. To the north lay the Berg River, to the east a range of rugged mountains that would later give the valley its name, Franschhoek, the French Corner, where to this day many of South Africa's Huguenot descendants still live. The town's flag strongly gestures to its French Huguenot origins, as does its coat of arms, which features the fleur-de-lis and grape motifs. Others were allotted land in the Dwars River Valley, as well as in what are now Wellington, formerly Wagenmakersville, and Stellenbosch. Many of the settlers named their new farms after the regions in France from which they had fled: Languedoc and Provence, Calais and Cabrières. Among the earliest established were La Motte, La Cotte, Chamonix, Dieudonné and La Dauphine, names that still endure today. Many of these farms retain their original homesteads, most built from scratch. It would be easy to romanticize their new lives, but the reality was far harsher. Many arrived with little and faced continual hardship. The climate and terrain were unfamiliar, and much of the land remained poorly suited to grazing or growing crops. At first they had only rudimentary tools and often lacked the funds to buy additional seeds and other essentials. Drought, difficult transport routes, theft, and unfair competition from VOC officials only added to their struggles. Yet through it all, they endured. They dug irrigation channels, planted wheat and fruit, and, most famously, vines. Some brought with them knowledge of viticulture from France. Others adapted traditional methods to new soil, a harsher sun, and unpredictable seasons. It was arduous work. They were poor, desperately poor, and in those early months the ache of exile never left them. As one early settler wrote in her journal, "I still awake at dawn expecting to hear the bells of La Rochelle, but the winds here carry only the cries of seabirds and the whisper of vineyards yet to be planted." Yet it was a start, and from these rocky beginnings, quite literally, South Africa's world-renowned wine industry was born. Growth was rapid. The number of vine plants at the Cape increased from 100 in 1655 to 1.5 million in 1700. The Huguenot legacy at the Cape endures in every glass of South African wine, with the vineyards of Stellenbosch and Franschhoek standing as living testaments to their spirit. When the English priest and travel writer John Ovington visited the Cape in 1693, he observed with admiration that their vineyards have been established over an area of more than 75 English miles, yet they still have their eyes on larger tracts of virgin soil before them. In this district they farm with livestock, plant maize, establish vineyards, and improve everything conscientiously for the greatest benefit. Some Huguenots also brought expertise in silk farming, cheese-making, and agricultural innovation, skills that left an indelible mark on the land. Along with these practical talents, they carried a Protestant work ethic, one already familiar to their Dutch neighbours, as well as traditions of family literacy, theological depth, and a quiet dignity forged through years of persecution. Still, their world was not entirely their own. The VOC remained wary of foreign influence, and within 2 generations, the Huguenots were expected to assimilate, culturally and linguistically, into Dutch society. French was banned in schools, and Dutch became the language of worship and instruction. Even their names were adapted. Duplessis became De Plessis, Leclerc became De Klerk. Some resisted, most did not. Over time, their distinct French identity softened, absorbed into a broader settler culture still in the making. Yet they never forgot their origins. One settler wrote in his diary, "Our language may fade among our children, but our spirit must not. Let them speak Dutch, But let them remember they are free because we would not kneel to a despotic king. Though Huguenot largely replaced by Dutch, its linguistic imprint remains, especially in Afrikaans. Words like klera for clothes, skuiki, small shop, and certain everyday expressions still betray their French roots. These terms evolved into uniquely Cape Dutch forms and later became part of Afrikaans, shaping the culture and language of the region in ways that endure to this day. They were a people carrying a vision, one shaped by Geneva and largely shared by their new Dutch neighbours. The Dutch Reformed Church, rooted in the same Calvinist tradition, emphasised moral order, divine providence and church discipline. So although the Huguenots initially spoke a different language, they were stepping into a spiritual world that was familiar, one striving, however imperfectly, to mirror the order and piety of Calvin's Swiss city on a hill. However, this religious certainty, marked by their Calvinistic assurance of salvation, also shaped their perception of both the land and its people. They were eager to spread the gospel to indigenous populations, but many commentators claim they were inclined to view them through a lens of spiritual and cultural inferiority, believing themselves divinely appointed to lead. This mindset may help explain why slave ownership, including among the Huguenots, became commonplace at the Cape, and why Britain's abolition of slavery across its empire in 1833 had such profound consequences. It should be noted, however, that many enslaved people in the colony lived within the households of their owners, often becoming integrated into daily family life, as was also the case, though in smaller numbers, in the Netherlands, though of course they remained bound by coercion rather than kinship. By the early 18th century, the Huguenots were no longer seen as foreigners. Their surnames, farming techniques and religious practices had become deeply woven into the broader cultural fabric of the colony. Though they had arrived as exiles, they were now central to the Dutch Protestant framework of the Cape. Their churches stood alongside Dutch Reformed congregations, and their voices, once distinctly French, had blended into a new colonial dialect. This process of successful assimilation was further accelerated by intermarriage. Many Huguenot descendants married into Dutch Cape families, united by their shared Calvinist faith. And what of that faith? As one historian noted, nowhere on earth is the legacy of Calvin stronger than in South Africa. Their Calvinism reinforced the Protestant atmosphere of the colony, with churches like the Huguenot Church in Franschhoek standing as enduring symbols of faith and perseverance. Dutch and French Bibles, along with psalters, became treasured possessions, either brought with them or acquired in the new colony. The sacred texts displayed at the Huguenot Memorial Museum in Franschhoek underscore the immense value placed on owning a personal copy. One legend tells of Pierre Jaubert, who smuggled his Bible, dated 1672, out of France hidden inside a loaf of bread. Jaubert's Bible became more than a book. It was a symbol of defiance, a token of faith carried through hardship and risk. As Protestants, the Huguenots placed a high premium on reading scripture for themselves, fostering literacy and education. This emphasis on personal engagement with the Bible likely influenced broader Cape society's respect for schooling and Bible study. Pierre Simon was appointed by the VOC as pastor to the Huguenots. He created a new verse translation of the Huguenot Psalter, the biblical Book of Psalms, which was published in Amsterdam in 1704 under the title Les Veilles Africaines ou les Psaumes de David, African Vigils or the Psalms of David. This work has been described as the first notable contribution to South African literature and theology. In an age where the written word was a powerful tool of influence, Simon's Psalter became a cornerstone of both spiritual and intellectual life in the Cape. The arrival of the Huguenots in the Cape left a significant mark on the region's architectural landscape. Their blend of French grace and Dutch practicality led to the development of what we now recognise as Cape Dutch architecture. The whitewashed homesteads with thatched roofs and tall curving gables reflect their refined sense of style, balanced by the practical needs of the new land. While this architectural style was modest compared to the grandiose buildings of Europe, it is widely praised for its symmetry, proportion and quiet elegance, qualities that still make these homes distinctive today. Their influence, though sometimes overshadowed by the stronger Dutch legacy, contributed a unique and lasting beauty to the Cape. Today, the Huguenot architectural legacy is most clearly seen, and felt, in Franschhoek. Standing tall at the end of the village is the Huguenot monument, completed in 1945. Designed by Dutch architect J.C. Jongens, it is more than stone and sculpture. It's a visual sermon. 3 soaring arches represent the Holy Trinity. At the centre stands a woman carved by Coet Steinberg, holding a Bible and a broken chain, symbols of faith and freedom, hard won and never forgotten. The Huguenot cross is prominently featured. First adopted by French Protestants in the 16th century, it became an enduring emblem of resilience and resistance during the brutal years of persecution. The cross itself is rich with meaning. Its 4 arms signify the spread of the gospel across the world. The 8 points recall the 8 Beatitudes. Each fleur-de-lis represents resurrection, with 3 petals standing for the Holy Trinity, and 12 petals in total, 1 for each apostle. The 4 tiny hearts symbolize love and loyalty to Christ, while beneath it all a descending dove represents the Holy Spirit, ever present, ever guiding. For those fleeing the revocation of the Edict of Nantes, the cross was a silent declaration of defiance, a reminder of their unyielding belief in religious freedom. Just beyond the monument lies the Huguenot Memorial Museum, housed in the reconstructed Susveld House, an 18th century manor originally designed by French architect Louis-Michel Thibault. Dismantled in Cape Town and carefully reassembled here in the 1950s, it stands as a tribute to classical French elegance, symmetry, proportion and restraint, all brought to African soil. Nearby stands the Dutch Reformed Church built in 1847. This structure speaks to the spiritual continuity of the community. Though Dutch in style, its roots are deeply entwined with those of the Huguenots, who worshipped, married and mourned here. These are more than heritage sites. They are touchstones of identity, echoing a story of exile, endurance and quiet transformation. Today, the Huguenot legacy endures in Franschhoek. Many descendants of the original settlers still honour their heritage, bearing French surnames, preserving traditions and tending the same soil their ancestors once did. The Huguenot monument and museum stand as lasting symbols of their journey, while the region's thriving wine culture remains a living tribute to their pioneering spirit. Each year, on the last weekend of October, Franschhoek pauses to remember. The Huguenot festival draws together descendants and visitors alike to celebrate not only the resilience of the past, but the richness it continues to bring to South African life today. The story of the Huguenots in South Africa is more than a tale of exile. It's a story of identity and belonging. These were people who arrived at the Cape as refugees, fleeing persecution, seeking sanctuary, but over time they became integral to South Africa's unfolding narrative. From the early days of Jan van Riebeeck to the turbulent era of the Boer War and beyond, the Huguenots have left a lasting imprint, not in numbers, but in spirit. The land they helped cultivate became more than a means of survival. It became a symbol of ownership, of rootedness, of independence. In time, this deep connection to the land gave rise to a fierce sense of identity, a Boer spirit, rooted in faith, perseverance, and a profound attachment to the soil. Over generations, this bond helped shape the emergence of Afrikaner identity. Many of those of Huguenot descent remained on their Western Cape farms and wine estates during the Great Trek of the 1830s and 40s, but they shared the same frustrations and aspirations as the trekkers. For the Boers, it was not merely an escape from British control. It was an assertion of their right to shape their own future, and in that future, the Huguenot legacy would prove undeniable. Their descendants would find themselves at the heart of South Africa's struggle for freedom and identity. The Boer War would be the culmination of this story. A battle not just for land, but for sovereignty and self-determination. Though the Huguenots had never sought independence for themselves, their legacy would become intertwined with the struggle that would ultimately shape the nation's future. We could put it this way. When the British Army faced Afrikaner forces in the Boer War, did it help them that among the enemy's ranks were men of Huguenot descent, not just Dutch? Clearly not. In the face of adversity, it mattered little whether one was of Dutch or French extraction. What mattered was the collective spirit of those who had come to call the land their own. Long before British ships cast anchor in Table Bay, it was the Huguenots, fleeing persecution and brimming with purpose, who left the most powerful non-Dutch imprint on the Cape. In the vineyards of Franschhoek, in the surnames that echo through South African history, and in the faith they carried from France, the Huguenots did not merely arrive, they assimilated and they enriched. The Cape stayed Dutch in law, church and tongue, yet something else took root. A French frisson, not of doctrine, but of spirit. It didn't radically alter the Dutch foundation so much as deepen it. And in that deepening lies a legacy, embodied in our Huguenots' who's who, that lingers to this day.
Yes, knowledge is bliss. Knowledge is ignorance is dangerous. We have to know what's happening around us. So let us move on to the next one. We know where the is happening. Weird enough, there are refugees again in America. This is a warning to Americans. Watch out. Did they go to did they come to South Africa with speaking the truth that they were subject to, did they qualify to be refugees? These guys, they like being refugees all the time. All the time. Let's hear about the Boer War because they did talk about the Boer War here. Let's listen to the Lost History Files. Boer War now. What are they having for us now? Let's get there.
The Boer War, a name that lingers in the mind, heavy with history. But how much do we actually remember? The details have faded like sepia photographs of khaki-clad soldiers serving Queen and country far from home, and of Boer fighters, defiant, brooding. Yet this was an extraordinary war, waged beneath a searing sun on the vast South African veldt. An epic struggle with stories still to tell, stories of heartache, intrigue, loyalty and sacrifice, of men and women bound by duty, torn by conflict, and forever marked by what they witnessed and what they did. The scale alone is staggering. Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand and India sent a combined force of 450,000 troops in Africa, outnumbering even the British Expeditionary Force at the end of 1914 in the First World War. And yet, despite their overwhelming numbers, the British faced an enemy unlike any they had fought before. Resourceful, mobile, fiercely determined to defend their homeland. The human cost was colossal. 22,000 Empire soldiers killed, 75,000 sick or wounded, and 900 missing. The Boers lost more than 6,000 commandos, while civilian casualties soared past 45,000. Many black Africans participated as soldiers, scouts and auxiliaries, mostly siding with the British, but some with the Boers. This wider perspective, and the war's profound impact on the entire region, is why today the conflict is often called the South African War. As we'll see, the war produced remarkable acts of courage, with no fewer than 78 Victoria Crosses awarded. Later in this talk we'll meet a mere boy of 15, whose courageous exploits captivated and strengthened a nation and an empire shaken by devastating early defeats. In some respects, the Boer War was strikingly modern. The Boers dug trenches, and the British deployed observation balloons. Yet in others it remained deeply traditional, with both sides continuing to rely on cavalry. A staggering 300,000 horses perished in British service, and these silent victims are commemorated in a life-size memorial unveiled in 1905 in Port Elizabeth. Here, the horses arrived by ship from across the Empire, even from New Orleans, only to face an average life expectancy of just 6 weeks. Scattered across Britain, more than 1,600 memorials stand in solemn tribute to those who fought in the Boer War. Among them, Brighton's majestic monument to the Royal Sussex Regiment, a lasting testament to the courage and sacrifice of its fallen soldiers. Street signs still echo the names of people and places forever bound to the war. Kimberley, Mafeking and Ladysmith, 3 key British garrison towns, are reminders of a desperate struggle, each besieged by Boer forces and later relieved in hard-fought victories that sent waves of jubilation through the streets of Britain. Over 20 English football grounds feature a stand called the Kop. But how many fans know the name's origin? Kop, Dutch for hill or small mountain, comes from the steep slopes of Spionkop in Natal, where, in January 1900, British forces suffered a traumatic defeat while fighting to relieve Ladysmith. Many of the soldiers who died at Spionkop were from Lancashire regiments, including men from Liverpool. This deep connection inspired the naming of the Kop at Anfield in 1906. Given the background, it's somehow fitting that this Kop generates a famously intimidating atmosphere, an unconscious tribute perhaps to those who once fought in the hills of Natal. The Boer War unfolds with a vivid cast of characters. Among them, an ageing but re-energised Queen Victoria takes a clearly active role. Now in her 80s, she remains steadfast in her belief in the war's justness, throwing her full support behind Prime Minister Lord Salisbury and Colonial Secretary Joseph Chamberlain. She sends personal letters to soldiers in the field, along with gifts. 100,000 chocolate tins arrive one New Year's Day, stamped with the royal insignia, of course. She lobbies for better conditions, visits the wounded in hospitals, offers encouragement to soldiers' wives and sympathises with war widows. It's quite possible that her deep personal commitment to South African affairs took a toll on her health, hastening her death in January 1901, more than a year before the war's end. She never lived to see the British victory she desperately longed for. 26-year-old Winston Churchill plays a dual role, reporting on the war for the Morning Post, while also serving as a junior officer. Churchill is just one of over 150 British and foreign war correspondents covering the conflict. The Times alone sends 20 reporters, though war coverage is far from a broadsheet monopoly. The 1870 Education Act had created a newly literate mass audience, hungry for news from the front. But rather than dense broadsheets, this audience preferred the punchy, image-driven style of illustrated periodicals and tabloids. This market shift helped the Daily Mail become the first newspaper in the world to sell 1 million copies a day during the war. In November 1899, Churchill is captured by the Boers and imprisoned in Pretoria. 3 months later, his daring, well-publicised escape, followed by his immediate return to the front, turns him into a national hero. His autobiography credits his experiences in South Africa as being crucial to his later success. And let's not forget Churchill's intrepid aunt, Lady Sarah Wilson, who, in reporting from Mafeking for the Daily Mail, becomes one of the first female war correspondents. She too is briefly captured after secretly conveying messages for the besieged British garrison. Also dispatched to South Africa by the Mail is the renowned thriller writer Edgar Wallace, who finds ample inspiration for future literary works. Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes, serves as a volunteer doctor in a field hospital. Beyond his medical duties, he shapes public opinion with both a widely translated pamphlet justifying Britain's position and his book, The Great Boer War. Though staunchly pro-British, these accounts portray Boer forces with great respect. His outspoken support for the war may well have influenced his knighthood in 1902. Colonel, later Lord Baden-Powell, wins fame as the heroic defender of Mafeking. The resourcefulness of the Mafeking Cadet Corps, boys tasked with running errands to free up the garrison's men, later inspires his creation of the worldwide Boy Scout movement. A young Gandhi, the future father of Indian independence, also takes part in the war, ironically on the side of Britain. When hostilities begin, he is in South Africa, advocating for the Indian community. Yet, eager to show his loyalty, he raises 1,100 Indian stretcher-bearers to support British troops in combat. Gandhi and 37 fellow stretcher-bearers received the Queen's South Africa Medal for their efforts, an honour shared by all serving members of the armed forces. 5 months after Lord Roberts' triumphant march into Pretoria in June 1900, seemingly sealing Britain's victory, Lord Kitchener takes command as the new British Commander-in-Chief. By this point, Ladysmith had long since been relieved, on the 28th of February 1900, igniting jubilant celebrations across the Empire. Church bells rang, streets filled with cheering crowds, and newspapers hailed the victory. Yet the Boers refused to yield, vanishing into the veldt to wage a vicious guerrilla war. Under mounting pressure to end the war decisively, Kitchener imposes a scorched earth policy, burning farms, razing homesteads, and denying the Boer guerrillas any means of survival. Even more controversially, he establishes internment or concentration camps to house Boer and African women and children. Though there was no genocidal intent to these concentration camps, mismanagement and dire shortages turn them into death traps. Overcrowding, malnutrition and disease run rampant, claiming the lives of thousands. It takes the welfare campaigner Emily Hobhouse to expose the camp's brutal conditions, igniting public outrage. Her revelations prompt an official inquiry by the Fawcett Commission, forcing improvements to the internees' plight. Eventually, Kitchener orders that no more women and children be brought into the camps. Tactically, it's a shrewd move, appeasing public opinion at home and forcing Boer guerrillas to support their families on an unveldt stripped of resources. With both sides militarily exhausted, Britain finally triumphs in the Boer War with the peace treaty of Vereeniging signed in 1902. Yet victory comes at a high cost, sparking intense scrutiny of army recruitment, training and tactics. Operating in Bloemfontein and Cape Town, Rudyard Kipling, no uncritical bard of empire, captures the public's reflective mood in his poem The Lesson. Its final line reads, "We have had an imperial lesson. It may make us an empire yet." What caused the Boer War? Taking the long view, the seeds were sown in England's greatest naval triumph, the Battle of Trafalgar, in October 1805. Off the coast of southern Spain, Nelson shattered Napoleon's fleet, cementing Britain's dominance over the seas. This enables Britain, 3 months later, to claim victory over France's allies, the Dutch, at the Battle of Blauberg in the Dutch Cape Colony, established by the mighty Dutch East India Company in 1652. Permanent possession of the colony gives Britain control of the only viable trade route to lucrative markets of India and the East, around the Cape of Good Hope. That is, until the Suez Canal opened in 1869. But there's one catch to claiming the Dutch Cape. The British inherit some 27,000 not especially welcoming neighbours. The Boers, the Dutch word for farmers, of Dutch Calvinist stock with a sprinkling of German, Flemish and French Huguenot heritage, the Boers are semi-nomadic. They speak Afrikaans, a language closely related to Dutch. Some embrace their new overlords and even come to consider themselves British, but many more chafe under colonial rule from Cape Town, particularly resenting the imposition of the English language and English law. The biggest early flashpoint, however, is Britain's abolition of slavery throughout the empire in 1833. For the Boers, whether or not they own slaves, this act defies God's preordained racial hierarchy, a belief that would later inform South Africa's segregationist policies from 1948 to 1994. The Boer response to Britain's abolition of slavery is the legendary Great Trek, an epic migration northward by wagon train into the heart of what is now modern South Africa. Along the way, 3 Boer republics are born: the South African Republic, or Transvaal, the Orange Free State, and Natal, nestled along the Indian Ocean. In 1843, Britain annexes Natal, pushing the Boers already settled there westward into the heart of the Orange Free State. In 1877, Britain annexes the Transvaal, sparking the brief but intense First Boer War of 1880 to 81. The Boers' unexpected victory restores Transvaal's independence and strikes a deep blow to British pride. Matters escalate further with the discovery of vast mineral resources. Between 1869 and 1871, diamonds are unearthed on farms in the contested region of Kimberley, causing a diamond rush that will ignite fierce competition and deepen the growing divide. Even more ominously, in 1886, gold is discovered in the Witwatersrand region of the Transvaal, triggering a gold rush and the founding of Johannesburg. The huge wealth transforms the area into one of the richest on earth, drawing thousands of mostly British prospectors, known as Uitlanders, the Dutch word for foreigners, who soon outnumber the Boer population, sending tensions soaring. The ill-fated Jameson Raid of 1895, an audacious, unofficial British plot to overthrow the Transvaal government, raises the stakes even higher. The coup, masterminded by Cecil Rhodes, ends in disaster and forces his resignation as Prime Minister of the Cape Colony, deepening the animosity on both sides. The Transvaal government, led by President Paul Kruger, denies the British Uitlanders political rights, fearing it would undermine Boer independence. This issue, along with British imperial ambitions, makes war increasingly inevitable. And then a pivotal moment. In October 1899, Kruger issues an ultimatum to the British government, demanding the withdrawal of British forces from the borders of the Boer republics. When the British government refuses, the Boers declare war on Britain, setting the stage for an explosive conflict. Caught off guard, the first phase of the Boer War is calamitous for Britain. Boer forces, led by Louis Botha and Piet Joubert, swiftly take the offensive, laying siege to the British garrison towns of Ladysmith in Natal and Mafeking and Kimberley in the Cape Colony. Years later, as the first Prime Minister of the self-governing Union of South Africa, Botha would fight in the First World War for Britain, leading a successful invasion of German Southwest Africa. Moreover, South African troops fought with distinction, not only in southern Africa, but on the Western Front, a dramatic change of allegiance within a relatively short period. In the Boer War, the Boers' skill, fierce determination and deep patriotism earn them respect. They know the local terrain intimately and their forces are highly mobile and elusive, able to strike swiftly from the shadows. They adopt cunning hit-and-run tactics, disappearing behind rocks and into trenches, patiently waiting for the advancing British troops, often vulnerably exposed, to come within rifle range. When the Boers do open fire, it's virtually impossible for the British to pinpoint their positions. The Boers' German-made Mauser rifles fire smokeless powder cartridges, while the British Lee Enfield, at least at the start of the war, still uses smoky black powder. It's no surprise then that the Boer motto becomes the Mauser and God, in that order. By mid-December 1899, Britain is pushed to a crisis point, having suffered 3 humiliating defeats and 3,000 casualties in just 1 week. Dubbed Black Week, it marks the darkest 7 days for British arms in the entire 19th century. Not everyone is downcast. Home rule for Ireland is another major issue of the day. Irish nationalists see the Boers as fellow plucky victims of British imperialism, and when British losses are announced in the House of Commons, nationalist MPs cheer, provoking uproar in the chamber. The first 2 British reverses in Black Week, at Stormberg and Marisfontein, come while trying to lift the siege of Kimberley. The third, at Colenso, occurs in the attempt to relieve Ladysmith. The 15th of December 1899, the Battle of Colenso, deep in Natal. The Boers lie in wait, as elusive as ever, across the northern banks of the river Tugela. The British battle plan is simple in theory. Shatter the Boer positions and punch open a vital route by road and rail to Ladysmith. There, 13,000 British troops have been clinging to survival for 6 long weeks, surrounded by 21,000 Boers, their fate hanging in the balance. The British Commander-in-Chief is Sir Edvers Buller. His reputation would never fully recover from crushing defeat at Colenso and later at Spion Kop. Buller is well liked by his men, but critics condemn his cautious nature and inability to marshal his officers with precision. Shortly after the battle he is carted, replaced by the iron-willed and decisive Lord Roberts. For 2 days before the battle, Buller's artillery thunders relentlessly, shaking the earth as shells stream across the sky. Explosions rip through the air, sending smoke curling over the Tugela River. But the bombardment is flawed. Many shells scream past their targets, crushing harmlessly beyond the well-concealed Boer positions. The enemy remains largely unscathed, waiting. Then, on the 15th of December, the battle erupts in full force. The British guns, 12 field pieces and 6 naval cannons, boom once more. But a fatal error unfolds. On the right flank, Colonel Charles Long, eager for decisive action, pushes the guns dangerously close to the riverbank. His mistake is immediate and catastrophic. Hidden among the scrub and rocks of the opposite shore, Boer riflemen take aim. The British gunners, exposed in the open, have nowhere to run. The Boer marksmen strike with deadly precision. Dozens of British gunners fall where they stand. The cries of the wounded drowned out by the relentless crack of rifle fire. Amid the carnage, Colonel Long, mortally wounded but unyielding, refuses to concede. Urged to order a retreat, he allegedly roars, "Abandon be damned, we never abandon guns." Yet defiance cannot change fate. The surviving gunners, unable to hold their position, are forced to withdraw, leaving the prized artillery stranded on the southern bank of the Tugela. Boer fighters swarm the abandoned guns, triumphant. Their cheers echo across the battlefield as they claim British firepower and a symbolic victory. But before they do so, in a final frantic bid to salvage their pride, a small band of British soldiers launches a daring attempt to retrieve the lost guns. Under withering fire, they race across the field, braving a storm of bullets, to haul the artillery back from the brink of capture. Against all odds, they manage to recover 2 of the guns, an act of astonishing bravery that earns several Victoria Crosses. It becomes one of the most celebrated and widely illustrated scenes in British military history. Among the Victoria Cross recipients were Captain Congreve of the Rifle Brigade, Captain Reed and Corporal Nurse of the Royal Field Artillery, and posthumously Frederick Roberts of the King's Royal Rifle Corps. Frederick Roberts was the only son of Lord Roberts, the man who would soon replace Buller as Commander-in-Chief. His death was a devastating blow. Grief-stricken, Lord Roberts never forgave Buller, convinced that his tactical blunders had led to the loss of his beloved Freddie. On the left flank at Colenso, disaster unfolds. Major General Hart searches in vain for a ford amid the sharp bends of the Tugela River, cursing the mistaken advice of a local scout who speaks no English. As confusion spreads, Hart's Irish Brigade, led by the Royal Dublin Fusiliers, advances into a killing field. Hemmed in by the river's loop, the advancing soldiers bunch together, forming a perfect target. From concealed positions, the Boers unleash a merciless storm of rifle fire, cutting down wave after wave of men. What was meant to be an advance becomes a slaughter. Some soldiers attempt to swim across the river, their heavy uniforms and equipment dragging them under. Several drown in the churning waters. Those who manage to reach the far bank soon realise their efforts are in vain. Pinned down by Boer fire, with no way to advance, they are left with no choice but to plunge back into the river and struggle for survival once more. Hart's brigade is torn apart by the sheer destructive power of the Boers' massed, magazine-fed rifles. In an action lasting less than an hour, his brigade suffers around 500 casualties. The losses of Black Week, culminating in this bloody defeat at Colenso, shake the British public to its core. If ever a symbol of hope were needed, it's now. Enter John Francis Dunn, just 15 years old, of the 1st Battalion Royal Dublin Fusiliers. Trapped with his comrades in the deadly loop of the Tugela River, the chaos of battle raged around him. But amid the carnage, Dunn's courage shone through. After the battle, Captain Gordon wrote to Dunn's father, who, with John's brother, would himself be posted to South Africa just weeks later. How proud we all are of the gallant conduct of your son, number 6408 Drummer Dunn. Despite the danger, he insisted on charging forward with the firing line when we tried to force the passage of the Tugela, even though several tried to hold him back. Glowing testimony. But there was even more to it than that, much more. Acting as bugler in the thick of battle, the boy soldier Dunn hears the retreat being sounded. But something isn't right. He knows, because his father drilled it into him, the British never sound a retreat in battle. It must be a Boer trick. Determined to set things right, he raises his bugle to sound the advance. At that moment, a Boer bullet tears into his right arm. Almost simultaneously, a shell fragment slams into his chest. Dunn crumples, his bugle slipping from his grasp. Blood pours from his wounds, but Dunn does not falter. With calm determination, he shifts his bugle to his left hand and finishes sounding the advance. The call is picked up by buglers along the line. Then, with bullets whistling around him, he charges straight into enemy fire, making for the river. Moments later, his unit is ordered to withdraw. Dunn collapses loss, his strength finally spent. In the chaos, his bugle vanishes beneath the river's surface, lost forever. John Francis Dunn was born in January 1884 to Irish parents, Michael and Elizabeth, in a humble thatched cottage known as The Smelt in Port St Mary, Isle of Man. A place of simple charm, it stood for over a century before being demolished in 2001. On his 14th birthday, standing just 4 feet 9 3/4 inches tall, Dunn followed family tradition and enlisted in the Royal Dublin Fusiliers. His father was already a proud colour sergeant. His brother Albert would soon be a bugler. Now it was his turn to take up the call. Dunn enlisted at Aldershot before heading to the Curragh military camp in County Kildare, Ireland for training. Officially, the British Army required recruits to be at least 18, 19 for overseas service. But for non-combatants, like drummers and buglers, the rules were more flexible. Yet, as Dunn proved, even they could find themselves on the front lines. The sacrifice of the Royal Dublin Fusiliers, the Dublins, in the Boer War is immortalised in Fusiliers Arch, erected in 1907 at the entrance to St Stephen's Green Park in Dublin. Nicknamed Traitor's Gate by Irish nationalists, Fusiliers Arch remains one of the few colonial monuments in Dublin to have survived since Irish independence in 1922. Queen Victoria held a deep affection for her Irish regiments, and the heavy casualties sustained at Colenso and other Boer War battles weighed heavily on her. In late February 1900, she expressed her sorrow, declaring, "I have heard with the deepest concern of the heavy losses sustained by my brave Irish soldiers." Shortly afterwards, she decreed that every man serving in an Irish regiment should wear a sprig of shamrock in his headdress each St Patrick's Day, no matter where he was stationed, a tradition that endures to this day. When Dunn had first arrived in South Africa, on the 1st of December 1899, his colour sergeant urged him to stay away from the front. But Dunn had other plans, replying, "I want to be with the company." And so, to the front he went. His widely reported actions at Colenso provided a significant morale boost for a public still reeling from the events of Black Week. Invalided back home to Blighty aboard a hospital ship, fellow Fusiliers carried him shoulder high through the cheering crowds at Portsmouth. He was then sent to the Royal Victoria Military Hospital in Netley near Southampton for treatment and recuperation, one of the largest military hospitals in the world at that time. Here, Dunn received royal visitors, Princess Henry of Battenberg and Princess Christian of Schleswig-Holstein, both daughters of the Queen. When Princess Christian asked what he would like the Queen to do for him, Dunn replied, "I hope Her Majesty will send me back to the front." Well, the Queen was in no position to do that. However, what she did do was command him to see her at Osborne House, her royal residence on the Isle of Wight, and he was to bring a large photograph of himself. The big day arrived on the 19th of January 1900. At Cambridge Barracks in Portsmouth, Dunn was ordered to parade and report shortly before 8 a.m. Escorted by a Lieutenant Knox, he departed Southsea Pier aboard a Southampton steam packet for the short journey to Cowes, before continuing on to Osborne. Arriving early, he was taken to the kitchens for a hearty breakfast. An impulsive domestic girl abandoned all protocol and kissed him. Afterwards, with Fox by his side, he was led through corridor after corridor, finally reaching a door guarded by two Indian servants in ceremonial dress. Once inside, Knox introduced Dunn to the Queen, who sat by a window. At Knox's signal, Dunn, dressed in the same khaki field uniform he had worn at Colenso, stepped forward and saluted. The Queen smiled on her young knight-errant. "And where were you wounded?" the Queen asked. "In the right arm and chest," Dunn replied. "How are you getting on?" "Almost well again." There was no mention of the Battle of Colenso, or back to the front. Instead, the Queen simply wished Dunn a full recovery and a successful military career. Throughout the whole proceedings, one newspaper observed, Dunn's demeanour was demure and self-possessed, and it is evident that public attention is not spoiling him. After accepting his photograph, the Queen thrilled Dunn by presenting him with a new silver bugle to replace the one he had lost in the Tugela River. She then spent some time alone with Lieutenant Knox, evidently to discuss young Dunn's future prospects. The new bugle's inscription read, "Presented to Bugler John Francis Dunn, 1st Battalion Royal Dublin Fusiliers, by Queen Victoria, to replace the bugle lost by him on the field of battle at Colenso on the 15th of December 1899, when he was wounded." When Dunn returned home to the Isle of Man 2 months later, he received another rapturous welcome. Carried shoulder high from Douglas Pier to the railway station, he was once again surrounded by a cheering crowd. The mood of the time was in a poem by Manxland Mary Jane Christian, published in the Ramsey Courier. It begins, "We greet thee, thou gallant boy, hero of England, Mona's pride and joy. Welcome, thrice welcome, to our lovely isle, and to our hearts as well, thou gallant child." By now Dunn was known throughout the empire. His image was everywhere, and his reputation was further polished by newspaper reports highlighting his membership of the Army Temperance Society and his habit of giving half his wages to his mother. Perhaps inevitably a commercial element crept in. All manner of items were produced bearing his name. Though he received no money from this, he did receive gifts. The Times reported that an anonymous London gentleman had presented him with a gold watch. Kindly ladies sent him lollipops, while a Portsmouth tradesman, in an unusual but memorable gesture, gave him a goat, promptly adopted by the Dub Fusiliers as a regimental mascot. Sadly, Dunn's wounds brought an end to the army career he cherished. After spending many months in various military hospitals, he was ultimately discharged as medically unfit on the 17th of March 1902. He received a £5 war gratuity and an army pension, but the soldier's life he had loved was behind him. He was offered the princely sum of £3,000, equivalent to around £450,000 today, by Madame Tussauds for his new bugle, but turned it down. Instead, he took it on a short-lived tour of music halls, where he played the role of a bugler. Unfortunately, the couple who claimed to be managing his new theatrical career disappeared, and Dunn never saw his precious bugle again. To make matters worse, his gold watch was stolen from a dressing room during one of his performances. One account suggests he was offered a position in the royal household, where he had clearly made a lasting impression. However, Dunn chose a different path, opting for a new life overseas as a ship's steward. He spent time in Fiji before settling in Australia with his Australian wife Hilda and young family. Bizarrely, several men attempted to pass themselves off as Dunn for financial gain, with one even sentenced to a month's hard labour for his trouble. Several times Dunn was falsely reported as dead. On one such occasion, a nurse who had treated him neatly, a Mrs. Galloway, was joyously reunited with him after 34 years. She was delighted to confirm to reporters that the real bugler Dunn was alive and well. "I remember going into Southampton to buy new feathers for his military hat," she recalled of his time at Netley. "He was a nice, clean-looking boy, and held himself so proudly." On the 1st of February 1950, 50 years after his memorable audience at Osborne House, Dunn passed away peacefully at Sydney Hospital, aged 66. The cause of death was a heart condition linked to the chest wound he had sustained at Colenso. In the weeks prior to his passing, he was visited by and reminisced with several Boer War veterans who, like him, had resettled in Australia. At his funeral, a Union flag was draped over his coffin, a final tribute to his bravery, before his ashes were scattered in the eastern suburbs Memorial Park, New South Wales. As every schoolboy once learned, at the Battle of Trafalgar, Nelson's flagship HMS Victory signalled, "England expects that every man will do his duty." During the Boer War, John Francis Dunn certainly did his. Years later, when asked why, he responded with characteristic modesty, "I did what I did because I was there, and because there seemed nothing else to be done." The Boer War is often remembered, when it is remembered, for its grand strategy and its roll call of late Victorian legends. These things matter. But perhaps the war's true heart lay in moments of unflinching courage, like that displayed by John Francis Dunn, a badly wounded boy who, amid the gunfire, still sounded the call, because for him, nothing else was possible.
There you have it. War. This boy here. Now let's go to another one. Yeah, I hope you're enjoying this South African history here. Let's look at British Zulu War. Yeah, man. South African history is war, war, war. That's how war, war.
It's January 1879, and in South Africa, the British Army has invaded the Zulu kingdom. Lord Chelmsford is supremely confident his redcoats will crush the spear-wielding Zulu army. Little does he know that King Cetshwayo's army of 20,000 Zulu warriors is closing in on the British camp at Isandlwana. It's the Anglo-Zulu War. In southern Africa, the 1870s are a decade of tension between the three major powers in the region: the Boer republics, the British Empire, and the Zulu Kingdom. By the end of the decade, the Anglo-Zulu War will change the balance of power in South Africa up until today. The Zulu Kingdom is a result of the dramatic expansion in power and influence of the AmaZulu tribe. This rise to regional power status starts under the rule of King Shaka, who led a successful coup in 1816. The young Shaka served as a warrior in a rival tribe during his exile, and now as king, he leads a revolution in the Zulu way of war. He introduces conscription for all able-bodied men, who start training at age 14 with a short stabbing spear called the assegai, and cowhide shields. The spear is also known as the iklwa, after the sound it makes when ripped from the enemy's flesh. Shaka also introduces a successful battlefield formation called Izimpondo Zankomo, the horns of the buffalo. The formation has four parts: the chest to close with the enemy and fix them in place, the two horns to outflank the enemy and encircle them, and the loins, which serve as a reserve. Shaka's highly trained army far outclassed the neighboring tribes. Intertribal warfare had been mostly a ritual show of force, but Shaka launches wars of annihilation to totally crush enemy forces. He then incorporates conquered tribes into the Zulu Kingdom, and in a few years, his army grows from 350 to about 20,000 men, and his kingdom to 30,000 square kilometers. Shaka's iron rule comes to an end in 1828 when his two half-brothers assassinate him, but the empire and the army remain. So from the early 19th century, the Zulu Kingdom is a military and political power in southern Africa. But they're not the only power in the region, and neighborly relations leave much to be desired. In 1824, the British establish a coastal trading post that eventually grows into the port of Durban. As Durban becomes a city and more Brits arrive, tension between the expansion-minded settlers and the fiercely independent Zulus increases. Even more dangerous from the Zulu point of view is the arrival of the Boers in the 1830s. These Dutch-speaking colonists have lived in southern Africa since the 17th century, but in 1837 they head northeast to get away from British rule and found new states. The Boer migrants enter Zulu territory, which results in clashes with Zulu forces. This sparks a wider war over territory, pitting the Zulus, who are suffering from an internal power struggle, against the British and the Boers. Zulu warriors sack Durban, but the Boers then defeat them at Blood River. After the 1838 war is over, the British and Boers force the Zulus to give them land. The Boers eventually establish the independent Republic of Transvaal, and the British expand the borders of their colony, Natal. The following decades see constant land disputes and border skirmishes between the three powers. By the 1870s, the British authorities in South Africa want to consolidate their power and see a potential solution in a confederation that would place the Boers and the Zulus under British rule. The architects of this policy are new High Commissioner Sir Henry Bartle Frere and Secretary of State for Native Affairs in Natal, Theophilus Shepstone. They, like many other British politicians in South Africa, think that the British have a duty to westernize the natives. As a first step towards the planned confederation, Britain annexes the Transvaal Republic, which is effectively bankrupt and fears its Zulu neighbours. The British and Boers want to continue to expand into Zulu territory, but Zulu King Cetshwayo and his government are angry at constant Boer incursions into their territory. Shepstone is impressed with the Zulu King. Cetshwayo is a man of considerable ability, much force of character, and has a dignified manner. I do not think he's very warlike, but he is naturally proud of his family, especially Shaka, to which he made frequent reference. The British administration, though, is unable to persuade Cetshwayo to cede any more land to the European settlers. As long as the Zulu Kingdom remains independent, the British can't form their confederation. The imperial government in London doesn't want a war and gives strict instructions to British authorities not to start one. But the colonial authorities defy their orders, and on December 11, 1878, they present Cetshwayo with an ultimatum designed for him to reject. The Zulus must pay fines for perceived offensives, hand over several chiefs to the British, disband the army, end the Zulu military system, give Christian converts and missionaries more rights, and allow a British agent political power over Zulu decisions. Other than the trumped-up fines, the king cannot accept these terms. Once the Zulu king rejects the sham ultimatum, the British have the excuse they need to start the Anglo-Zulu War. The British invade the Zulu kingdom on January 11, 1879. In command is Lord Chelmsford, an experienced officer who fought in the Crimean War and colonial conflicts in the empire. His recent experience fighting the Xhosa people causes him to form a low opinion of all African warriors, an underestimation he will soon regret. The British force that begins the campaign has about 7,800 men, most of them regular troops. They're armed with the powerful breech-loading Martini Henry rifle, and the artillery brings along several cannons, a rocket battery, and a few Gatling guns. There are also African troops fighting alongside the British in the Natal native contingent. These troops are from tribes already under British control, and they're under the command of white British officers. 9 of every 10 African soldiers in the native contingent carries an assegai spear, and only 1 in 10 is allowed to have an outdated Snider rifle. These troops are poorly trained and are meant to play a supporting role rather than a main battle force. To distinguish themselves from the enemy Zulus, the native contingent wear red bandanas. A second and more effective auxiliary force is the Natal native horse. These riders are mostly from the Amangwane people, traditional enemies of the Zulus. The Natal native horse wear tan uniforms, ride basuto ponies, and carry a carbine alongside their spears. The last component of the British-led invasion force are white settler soldiers, including the Natal Carbineers. They're under the command of Theophilus Shepston's son George, and have about 300 riders. Chelmsford is supremely confident that this force will crush the Zulus. He plans for 3 British-led columns to march on Ulundi, the Zulu capital. The left column under Colonel Evelyn Wood and the right column under Colonel Charles Pearson are to draw Zulu troops away from Ulundi. Chelmsford's central column will then have an easier time when it marches straight on Ulundi and the main Zulu army. Meanwhile, King Cetshwayo gathers about 35,000 warriors to defend the kingdom, and he sends them off on January 17th with an impassioned speech. I have not gone over the seas to look for the white man, yet they have come into my country, and I would not be surprised if they took away our wives and cattle and crops and land. What shall I do? I have nothing against the white man, and I cannot tell you why they came to me. They want to take me. What shall I do? The Zulu warriors answer their king. Give the matter to us. We will eat up the white man and finish them off. They will not take you while we are here. So Lord Chelmsford's 7,800 troops have invaded the Zulu kingdom, and King Cetshwayo's 35,000 warriors have come out to meet them. The very first battle would turn the entire British war plan upside down. Chelmsford's advance into the Zulu kingdom proceeds at a snail's pace. His army is slowed down by its wagon train and rain that swells rivers and turns roads into muck. The British commander is convinced the Zulus won't fight until he's close to the capital, so he sends out units from his central column on reconnaissance missions. Meanwhile, the Zulu army is moving much more quickly. Their scouts identify Chelmsford's column as the main force, and they purposefully draw the British scouting units away from the main column to weaken it. They even manage to lure Chelmsford himself away from his main camp at Isandlwana. Chelmsford is so confident that he goes against British Army doctrine and doesn't even fortify the camp before he leaves. But the British are blundering into a Zulu trap.
Red Bull Vlugtag is coming to Cape Town. Enter your team at redbull.com/vlugtagza.
Their scouts see some Zulu units on the move, but the Brits assume that they're just isolated units. In fact, they're the vanguard of the main Zulu army of 20,000 men, which is bearing down on the unfortified British camp. On January 22nd, the Zulus are within striking distance. Veteran Zulu commander Chief Nchingwayo Kamahole hesitates to attack, but his scouts tell him of the weakness of the British defenses. A warrior remembers the scene. Our scouts reported to the leaders that the white people were scattered about on the hills of camp like a lot of goats out grazing, and that they were convinced that the ancestor spirits of the Zulu nation had put them in their hands to be killed, and they should attack. In the end, the young men prevailed against their more cautious leaders and were given the order to attack. While Chelmsford is enjoying a picnic 20 kilometers away, British scouts observe Zulus approaching. Acting Commander Lieutenant Colonel Henry Pullane fears the Zulus are about to attack, but underestimates their size, so he doesn't fortify the position. All he has are 1,600 men and 2 7-pounder cannons. At 11 a.m., British riders out chasing a herd of loose cattle accidentally come face to face with the entire Zulu army. One of the cavalrymen, James Hamer, remembered. On coming up, we saw the Zulus, like ants in front of us, in perfect order, quiet as mice, and stretched out across in an even line. We estimated those we saw at 12,000. The Zulus realized their cover's been blown, so they abandoned their stealthy approach and launch an immediate, full-scale attack. The Zulu army advances in the horns of the buffalo formation, the chest surging from the valley and sweeping across the plain towards the camp, while the horns seek the vulnerable British flanks. According to a British soldier, the enemy ranks are 10 to 12 men deep. Lieutenant Colonel Pullane still doesn't grasp the gravity of the threat. Instead of retreating to a strong defensive position at the base of nearby Isandlwana Hill, he forms a fighting line at the edge of his camp. But this perimeter is overstretched, and its flanks are vulnerable to the Zulu horns. The thin British line initially holds its ground. The riflemen pour devastating volleys into the Zulus, and the 7-pounder cannons add bursts of shrapnel. The Zulu formation's chest is stopped in its tracks, and the warriors forced to ground. But the horns have more success and begin to turn the British flanks. The Zulus put them under immense pressure, and the British-led troops are running short on ammunition. Pullane orders his men to pull back to camp to be closer to their ammunition supplies. But just as the British start to withdraw, the Zulus recognize their opportunity and charge the enemy. Captain Essex of the 24th Regiment is in the front line when the Zulus attack. In a moment, all was disorder. Few of the men had time to fix bayonets before the enemy was among them, using their assegais with fearful effect. I heard officers calling to their men to be steady, but retreat became in a few seconds general. Trooper Sparks of the Natal Mounted Police is in the camp as the British position collapses. There was a great deal of confusion, no kind of formation being made for defense of the camp. The Zulu army had thrown out wings on our flanks so that we were hemmed in on 3 sides, and in a very short time the camp was invaded by vast numbers of Zulus. It was impossible to make any effective defense. The battle becomes a slaughter. A handful of mounted Brits cut their way out of the disaster, leaving behind isolated groups of soldiers who make desperate last stands. The Zulus do not take prisoners, and 1,300 British-led troops are killed, including Theophilus Shepston's son George. Zulu losses are unknown, but are probably more than 1,000 dead and wounded. The Battle of Isandlwana is a clear Zulu victory. Chelmsford's central invasion force is destroyed. But just as that battle ends, another is beginning. On the border river between Natal and the Zulu Kingdom is a small mission station that the British have converted into a hospital and supply depot commanded by Lieutenant John Chard of the Royal Engineers. At midday on January 22nd, 2 ashen-faced British survivors from Isandlwana gallop into the station, bringing dire warnings that the Zulus have wiped out the central column and will soon be at Rorke's Drift. Chard knows the faster Zulus will easily catch them if they leave the station, so they choose to stand and fight. The British garrison races against time to build an improvised defensive perimeter. All in all, they have about 400 men. Meanwhile, a Zulu force of about 4,000 men approaches Rorke's Drift under the command of King Cetshwayo's half-brother, Prince Dabulamanze Kampande. His men were held back in reserve at Isandlwana and didn't see much action, so the prince is keen to win his share of the glory now. So he disobeys his king's orders not to cross the Buffalo River into British territory. When the Zulus appear at about 4 p.m., the Natal Native Horse and Natal Native contingent troops and their British officers flee, leaving Chard with just 150 men. With the Zulus pressing, Chard's men fall back to a makeshift position. After vicious hand-to-hand fighting, the British fall back again and abandon the burning hospital. The advancing Zulus kill most of the patients. By now, it's 7 p.m. The British survivors, exhausted and short on ammunition, man the last barricade and resolve to die hard. The Zulus sense that victory is at hand and launch repeated assaults throughout the night, the fighting illuminated by the flames of the burning hospital. Private James Hitch is one of the men holding the last line of defense. He's been shot in the shoulder, but he doesn't have time to do anything more than cram bandages into the wound to slow the bleeding. He later recalls the frenzied combat. In one of these nasty rushes, 3 Zulus were making for me. The first fellow I shot. The second man I bayoneted. The third man got right into the laga, but he declined to stand against me. With a leap, he jumped over the barricade and made off. A few yards from the barricade lay a wounded Zulu. Presently I saw him, rifle in hand, taking aim at one of my comrades. It was too late to stop him. He fired, and poor Private Nicholas fell dead, shot through the head.
With Google Workspace, you can create a Gmail account with your own domain and branding, helping your business look professional in any inbox. That's business email made easy with Google Workspace.
But the Zulus struggle to coordinate their attacks in the darkness, and the defenders are able to beat off each new rush. Around midnight, the Zulu assault begins to weaken and comes to a stop at 2 o'clock in the morning, although Zulu warriors do still harass the British with rifle fire until 4. After 12 hours, the Battle of Rorke's Drift is over, and the station remains in Britain. The Zulus suffer up to 850 dead and wounded, and the British kill wounded Zulus after the battle is over. The British lose 14 dead, but most of the survivors are wounded. In a sign of the intensity and desperation of the battle, London later awards 11 Victoria Crosses, including 7 for the 24th Regiment alone, the most for a single action by one regiment in British Army history. The battle is later famously depicted in the 1964 British film Zulu, starring Michael Caine and Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the great-grandson of King Cetshwayo. So, an isolated British garrison has held out against the Zulus at Rorke's Drift, but one dramatic action cannot hide the fact that the British campaign is disintegrating. After Isandlwana and Rorke's Drift, the British situation is grim. Chelmsford's main column is gone, and the other British columns are now isolated and in grave danger. The Zulus waste no time and surround and besiege Pearson's column. The desperate Chelmsford orders Wood to create a distraction to draw off Zulu forces. On March 28th, Wood's men attack a Zulu hill fort at Bani, and the British run into trouble immediately. This time, the Zulus put up a spirited defense from inside their position and used captured British rifles to pour fire into the attackers. The British attack is uncoordinated, partly due to a thunderstorm. 1/3 of the British force, including nearly all the South African volunteers of the Border Horse, are killed, and Wood retreats to a strong defensive position at Kambula. But victory at the Battle of Shlobane makes Zulu commander Nyamana Kangengelele overconfident. Back in January, the king ordered his commanders not to attack fortified British positions, but to draw them out into the open. If you come near to the white man and find that he has made trenches and built forts that are full of holes, do not attack him, for it will be of no use. But if you see him out in the open, you can attack him, because you will be able to eat him up. Instead, Nyamana maneuvers his army of 20,000 warriors, many of them veterans of Isandlwana armed with captured rifles, to attack the British at Kambula. But Wood has learned from British mistakes. His 2,000 troops form a wagon laga, or wagon fort, and clear the ground around it to create a killing field for rifle fire and their 6 7-pounder cannons. On March 29th, the Zulus attack with the Horns of Buffalo formation, but British small arms and artillery fire from the safety of the wagon fort cut down hundreds of warriors. Some determined Zulus reach the wagons, but they can't break through. The Zulus regroup and attack several times, but each time they take heavy losses and fail to reach the Laga. After 4 hours, the Zulu army is exhausted and begins to retreat. Wood sends out 600 cavalry to pursue them, and the retreat becomes a rout. The Battle of Kambula is a decisive British victory. They lose 28 dead and 54 wounded, but inflict at least 2,000 casualties on the Zulus, including Zulu wounded that the British kill afterwards. The defeat damages the spirit of the Zulu army, as one warrior later remembers. Our hearts were broken at Kambula. I dared not go within a shot of the British after this time. The Zulus have suffered heavy losses which they cannot replace, and despite their captured rifles, they have no answer to the British Army's immense firepower advantage. In April, Lord Chelmsford leads a new British column to relieve Pearson's besieged force. The Zulus intercept the relief column at the Battle of Jinjinlovu on April 3rd, but by now, even Chelmsford has learned his lesson. The British fortify their position and use rocket batteries and Gatling guns in support of the infantry. When the Zulus attack, a hail of British bullets kills or wounds 1,000 warriors in just 20 minutes. The rest of the Zulus retreat and lose even more when British cavalry chases them down. The tide of the war has turned in favor of the British. King Ketsueo tries to open negotiations to preserve his kingdom, but the British refuse. On May 31st, a massively reinforced British army of 25,000 men begins a new invasion of the Zulu kingdom. Amongst the invaders is a European celebrity, the Prince Imperial, Louis-Napoleon Bonaparte. He's the son of deposed French Emperor Napoleon III, and is serving in the British artillery. He's so keen to see action that he sets out on dangerous reconnaissance missions into enemy territory, and is killed by a Zulu war party on June 1st. In an odd twist of fate, the Zulu War ends the Bonaparte line forever. While European newspapers are abuzz with the news of the Prince Imperial's death, the Zulus muster the remains of their battered army for a last stand to save their homeland. The British advance until, on July 3rd, they're not far from the Zulu capital of Ulundi. They form a large square supported again by artillery and Gatling guns and await the expected Zulu assault. The Zulus know that this is a do-or-die battle, with their independence and freedom hanging in the balance. A British soldier later writes about the Zulu charge. Our fire didn't check them in the least. Nearer they came, 100 yards, 80 yards, still rushing on, a thick black mass. Lord Chelmsford came galloping up, telling the 58th and 21st to fire faster. I pulled out my revolver. The 9-pounder crashed through them again and again, but at that short distance, the canister didn't burst. Everyone thought it would be hand-to-hand in another minute, when, at 60 yards, the mass faltered, wavered, and withered away. The Battle of Ulundi lasts just 30 minutes. Once again, Concentrated British rifle, artillery, and Gatling gun fire shatter the Zulu army. The surviving Zulus flee, and the British enter the royal capital and burn it to the ground. King Cetshwayo escapes, but the British capture and imprison him on August 28th. The Anglo-Zulu War is over after 6 months of fighting. British-led forces suffer 1,900 killed, while the Zulus probably lose about 7,000 dead. There is no formal peace treaty. The British simply divide the Zulu kingdom into 13 chiefdoms ruled by puppet chiefs and rename it Zululand. This arrangement leads to incessant civil wars, and in 1883, the British reinstate Cetshwayo as king to restore order. Soon after, he dies after a battle against another British-installed chief. Zululand will remain semi-independent under British influence and be ravaged by civil war until the British fully annex it to their Natal colony in 1897. In 1906, a Zulu rebellion against the British fails. The Zulu identity of the state is only restored when the Natal region of South Africa becomes KwaZulu-Natal after the end of apartheid in 1994. The Zulu resistance against Imperial Great Britain is famous today even in the West, but it wasn't the only act of military resistance. Far from it. 100 years before the Zulu Wars and across the Indian Ocean, Tipu Sultan was one of the few rulers able to go toe-to-toe with the East India Trading Company. He fought against British control, and his artillery was so advanced, the British even stole remains off of the battlefield to study for their own use. But his legacy is controversial to this day. If you want to learn more about Tipu Sultan, I recommend that you check out our friends from Extra History and their documentary about this fascinating historical figure. You can watch Tipu Sultan, Tiger or Tyrant exclusively on Nebula, a streaming service that we're building together with other creators like Extra History. If you head over to nebula.tv/realtimehistory, you can sign up for an annual subscription for just $30 a year. On Nebula, you can watch exclusive content like Tipu Sultan or our brand new series, Red Atoms, about the Soviet nuclear program. But you can also watch all our regular videos there ad-free and usually earlier than on YouTube. That's nebula.tv/realtimehistory for 40% off and supporting us directly. We want to thank Spencer Jones, Alexander Hyman, and the Royal Philatelic Society London for their help with this episode. As usual, you can find all the sources for this episode in the video description. If you're supporting us on Patreon or Nebula, thank you so much. We couldn't do it without you. I'm Jesse Alexander, and this is a production of Real Time History, the only history channel that remembers the Shaka Zulu movie with David Hasselhoff. Never forget.
Got it.
Hey, it's me, your dry skin. Craving the ceramides in CeraVe.
After a very long drive, I finally made it to Oranje to do a follow-up of my last documentary, and this time I've brought a very special friend.
What he means is he brought a very special black friend.
This is Sivingezi. He's an actor, comedian, TV personality, and today, my partner in exploring one of South Africa's most controversial communities, Oranje.
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 Why is everyone so obsessed with Oranje?
People are curious about the unknown, and Oranje is one of those unknowns.
For those who haven't seen my last documentary, here's a quick recap. Oranje is a self-declared Afrikaner-only town, founded in 1991, with a population of nearly 3,000 and growing fast. They have their own government, currency, flag, and schools. To live there, you have to be a white Afrikaner, uphold Calvinist Christian values, and have a clean criminal record. Recently, Oranje and the broader Afrikaner community have been in the news because of South Africa's new Expropriation Act, which allows land seizures without compensation.
Terrible things are happening in South Africa. They're taking away land, they're confiscating land.
In response, US President Donald Trump signed an executive order cutting aid to South Africa and offering refugee status to Afrikaners, saying they're facing racial discrimination. But more on that later. The last time I was here, I focused on understanding Aranya's way of life without pushing too hard. But this time, with Siv by my side, we're not holding back.
Are black people allowed in Orania? If you had a daughter, would you let your daughter marry a black person? Do you see me as an equal to you?
We're here to ask the hard questions, challenge the community's beliefs, and finally address a question everyone has been asking.
Did you hear about the one person who voted for EFF in Orania? There was one guy.
More importantly, I'm here to document Siv's experience as a black man in a town of nearly 3,000 white people. We are just outside the gates of Orania, and I am sitting here with Siv and Gezi. I wanted to know from you, what are you expecting Orania to be like?
Crazy. Something I've never ever seen before. I've seen videos, but I don't think the videos can give it justice. But I definitely am expecting something backwards. Backwards in thought, backwards in how it looks. But I know I'll be disproved. You know what I mean?
So this is Orania.
It's greeted me. Everyone's waving. Everyone is waving. Okay, that's confusing.
Are you nervous to go there and be the only black person in Orania?
Nervous is not the word. I think uncomfortable. But everyone has been telling me, stay safe, stay safe. I'm not scared at all. I've been in crazy places before, so I don't feel unsafe. But I feel it's going to be different and uncomfortable. And I love uncomfortable. It looks more modern than I thought it would look. But it looks very Afrikaans. Big cars, a Orania flag, doors are just open, no gates. There is a statue of Hendrik Verwoerd, the architect of apartheid. Okay, there's kids. Kids are just walking around. They're kids just walking around. So it's definitely as safe as people think it is. Bicycles is hanging up, not locked. It feels different. It really does feel different. You can feel that this is not, it's South Africa, but not South Africa. Did you tell them I'm black?
Hi, we've just arrived.
Are you the guest for the three sleeper?
Yes.
Joshua?
Yes, that's it. After checking in, we took a short walk to the Orange River, which is just a few minutes from where we were staying. We went for a swim to cool off before heading out for dinner. Later, we drove up to Orania's highest point to watch the storm roll in after an unbearably hot day. So what are you thinking of Orania so far?
It's a mind wobble.
After a very long day, we headed home to get some rest. The next morning, we made our way back into town for a tour with Joost Ryden, who is the CEO of Orania. He's also the same person who showed me around last time and a very important member of this community.
So what are you looking to? What is your your expectations? What are you looking to achieve?
My Afrikaans friends were like, you have to go, you have to see it. It's not what you imagine. Just go see it, go there with an open mind. Then the other people who don't know anything about it have gone, keep safe. Oh my goodness. What if you die? And send us your live location.
Yeah, you are here basically to see which one of those groups were right. Orania's got two histories. History of the place, which we can go back many years, but the town itself has got a history, and then the idea has got a history, right? So that's a very important thing to always understand about Orania. It's a space, it's a place, it's also an idea.
The idea behind Orania is simple. Afrikaners should have their own homeland, a place where they can govern themselves, preserve their culture, and ensure economic self-sufficiency without relying on outside influences.
So who owns the land?
Right, so Orania, the original town, was bought by a group of people who donated money to the effort, and it's just owned by a company. So Orania is private land, but Orania is one of the only systems in the country that I know, maybe the Ingonyama Trust is the same way. It's a combination between private and public in the same system, and that makes Orania very unique.
This cannot be what I think it is.
This is Barren Karoo, my friend, and this is changed into a runway, and we hope to change it into a proper airport, but obviously it's expensive to do. So one of the ways that we get investment here is to subdivide it, to install proper plots so people can buy houses, and so that they can build and create wealth in that fashion, and that will help fund tarring this runway so that we can get proper flights here. And yes, next time you can fly in here, but you have to do your commercial license first.
Oh, so I didn't have to drive 10 hours?
We're gonna make it easy.
Yeah. There's a lot of construction here, right? Like everything, there's building everywhere. And how do you guys have enough labor, like manpower, to be able to do it?
Orania grows very fast. We have an annual growth rate of between 12 and 15% for the last 5 years in population, and that's mostly people moving to Orania. One of the reasons why we focus so much on training people as masons, as engineers, as plumbers, as electricians, is because we need their labor. We need to grow our town even more, so labor is of immense importance. It's Afrikaners building for Afrikaners. And if we one day have a proper city, our plan is to grow from town to city. If we have a city, we can look back and say, well, we did it ourselves. We didn't misuse anyone. It's no one else built our future for us. We built it.
Brandon? Good to see you guys. Muji, so nice to meet you guys. I want to play some touchies, play some touchies. Let's play some touchies here. I'm ready.
For our international viewers, when Siv refers to touchies, he's talking about rugby, which is one of South Africa's most popular sports, and of course, our team is the best in the world. Siv is also good friends with many of the Springbok players.
Do people support the Springboks?
Yes. Well, there's I think mixed.
What?
Mixed reactions to that.
What do you mean?
So during the World Cup, we will find a lot of very enthusiastic World Cup viewers, and you will also have some people that's critical.
Rugby holds deep cultural significance for many Afrikaners in South Africa. And in Orania, some passionately support the Springboks, but others are more hesitant, not because they dislike the team, but because they feel disconnected from modern South Africa. They believe national symbols like the Springboks help hold the country together and serve as a distraction from the failings of the ANC government. For them, supporting these symbols feels like reinforcing a system they no longer fully identify with. Still, when the World Cup was on, people in Orania gathered to watch, proving that despite political differences, sport remains a powerful unifier.
So we're up here on Monument Hill. We have monuments representing the future and representing the past. From this half circle, none of the monuments here was bought by us, none of it was made by us. They were either donated or in more cases thrown away somewhere else, rejected. They are fugitives here.
One of the most controversial aspects of Orania is their display of monuments honoring historical figures from the apartheid era. Among them stands Hendrik Verwoerd, a key figure during apartheid and the country's prime minister at the time, whose legacy continues to spark deep division and debate.
I was taught from a very young age to absolutely hate this man, to despise him. He's made, like, even looking at his face, I was just taught to dislike him, right? Do you not think having people like him and their monuments here is spitting in people's faces of people who died, people who were marginalized for many years? I know people's past is important, but isn't that not disrespectful to many who have died because of him and marginalized?
I'm going to answer you a counter question, and that is the fact that we fought many wars against the Zulus. What about Shaka Zulu, celebrating him? Is that fine for the Zulus or Dingaan? So it's part of their history. And even though we had massive wars in the Great Trek, I grant them their right to celebrate the people of their past. And all the same, I think Afrikaners have the right to have a statue of someone from our past, and internally, in our nation, in our people, decide how we interpret that.
In 1991, a group of Afrikaners led by Professor Karel Boshoff, son-in-law of former Prime Minister Hendrik Verwoerd, founded Orania in South Africa. They legally purchased land on the banks of the Orange River, ensuring full ownership and control. While Orania operates within South African law and relies on the country for certain resources, it aims to become more self-sufficient in the future. Today, leadership has passed to Karel Boshoff IV, the founder's son, who we will be interviewing later in this video.
You only have 3,000 people here. When this place gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it'll be harder to maintain and live a lifestyle like this. What are you going to do when this place gets so big and it'll be harder to reach everyone and help everyone?
That will be our test. And I cannot say if we will pass our test or fail our test, but we will do everything in our ability to pass that test. Orania was not created to be a safe haven for 3,000 people to run away and live in isolation and forget about the world. It was created as a growth point for Afrikaner freedom. So if we can maintain 3,000, it's good. If we can do 10,000, better. If we can do 100,000, that will be our test.
During our tour, we stopped at one of the local colleges, which has become a hub for Afrikaner students from all around the country. We wanted to see what kind of courses they were offering and hopefully have a chat with some of the students.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. Nice to meet you, Carla.
Nice to meet you.
On this moment, we have 8 courses.
Okay, what are they?
Yes, they are the bricklaying, the electrical, the plumbing, farming, and mechanization. We have home-based carers, so there's a 1-year course and a 6-month course. And then we have civil engineer diploma and also early childhood development.
Okay, so
yes.
things that Iranians need.
Yes, yes.
What's your name?
Marco.
Marco, where are you from?
Rustenburg.
How long have you been in Irania?
Like 3 days.
3 days?
Yes.
Okay, so I see all of you have got your hair cut. What happens there?
Yeah, it's the tradition of the first years.
Okay.
We cut our hair. So everybody in the town can know we are first years.
So what do you love the most about Orania?
I will say the hostels.
The hostels?
Yes.
Is it lekker?
Yeah, it's very lekker.
Do you play any sport?
Rugby.
Is it? What position?
Flank.
Kom, het moet speel, man. Dan moet je speel. I'm a flank. Okay, who's your favorite rugby player?
Peter Stef de Toy.
Peter Stef. Second? Who's the other second?
I will say Eben.
Eben next to me?
Yes.
Away Eben, Peter Stef. Check yeah. First year. Baie goed. Everyone calls Orania racist. Are they racist in Orania?
Sure they are.
I like how you're so honest about that.
But I think the Orania idea is not inherently racist. I think it is the right of a people to want to strive towards preserving their culture and their ways of life and their religion and who we are. I think we are a nation, a unique nation. The fact that we are white is maybe one part of what we are, but it's not the whole picture. We have a specific, distinctive culture, and that's what we want to protect.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you. How's your day? Thank you. Yes, please, ma'am. If someone is outrageously racist here, with a Hitler flag on their wall, would you guys say nothing to that?
I think what we would say is, if that is the sentiment you come here, you maybe misunderstand the Orania idea. There have been people in the past who removed themselves from the community because they had fringe, very extremist religious beliefs, very extremist political beliefs, and they didn't feel comfortable, so they left.
So you can be kicked out of Orania for being too hectically racist or too hectically
just
militant?
To be stupid, to put the Orania idea at risk, to put our future at risk. But I think it can happen, but I think what is more the case is people who are so extremist that they are lost all sense of reality just leave Orania voluntarily because they see what we are doing here is not necessarily what they believe to be the truth.
Okay. Because I'm used to black labor, because technically this shouldn't be anything amazing. It should be just people working to build their own flipping livelihoods. But in South Africa, you only see black people doing this work. So this looks a bit weird. But it shouldn't be weird, huh? You know what I mean? It's baie man. It's baie. What is happening here?
So right now we are busy getting practical exercise for our building and construction.
Okay. Where are you from?
Originally from Nelspruit.
And how long have you been in Orania?
Since last year.
And how are you enjoying it?
It's very nice. The amount of experience I've got here, it's amazing, man.
And why did you come here? You could have gone anywhere.
So let me tell you something. I'm just going to give you a bit of background.
Please.
2023, I qualified as a diesel mech.
Okay. What's that? It's a diesel mechanic.
Yeah, diesel mechanic.
Okay.
So we searched on the internet and we saw, this is now a college where we can really get exposed to a lot of practical and theoretical.
Okay.
And at that time, at that place, that was like the best option we physically could get on.
Okay.
It's really nice to be around my culture as well and just to be between my people.
You look like you'll be a lekker rugby player. What position?
I used to play a flank.
Me too. It was a flank here.
With Google Workspace, Drive lets you easily search your files, making videos, PDFs, and over 100 other file types accessible from wherever you are. That's secure storage made easy with Google Workspace.
Freedom with #1 PDF editor. Join millions globally using our top-rated online PDF editor for streamlined file.
Recently, the Afrikaner community has been in the spotlight due to claims made by US President Donald Trump that South Africa is experiencing widespread violence and discrimination against the Afrikaner population. He pointed to a controversial expropriation bill that allows land to be taken without compensation. South African officials have denied these claims, stating that the situation has been misunderstood and that the expropriation bill is only meant to be used under very specific circumstances. However, many Afrikaner farmers feel disproportionately affected by violent attacks, with reports of brutal assaults that include threatening symbols and messages. This has been further fueled by South African political figures like Julius Malema, who has faced criticism for his kill the Boer rhetoric, which many see as inciting violence against Afrikaners. This issue continues to be a contentious topic in South Africa's ongoing debate over land reform and racial tensions.
So Cyril signed the Land Expropriation Without Compensation Act recently. So if I want a piece of this place, can I get a piece of Maranya? Or
Definitely not going to expropriate it without compensation. We in the strongest terms condemn this bill. Firstly, because it's a denial of private property rights. No country can function without the right to private properties. No banks can give loans. It's the potential for a South African disaster is massive. Secondly, the political tool that it is used as to fuel race hate, to pile people up against one another, based on what I believe to be totally false claims.
The Afrikaner community is deeply concerned about the expropriation bill because land is at the heart of their identity and livelihood. Afrikaners have long been the backbone of South Africa's agricultural industry, owning vast amounts of farmland. With this new law allowing land to be taken without compensation, many fear losing farms that have been in their families for generations. For them, it's not about property. It's about culture, heritage, and survival. And they're prepared to defend it by any means necessary.
I have a sneaky suspicion there's many guns around here, like there are in Middle America and a lot of Americans. What is your views on guns here? Because I'm sure people here are willing to protect their livelihoods with guns and violence.
Yes, we have a gun culture that stretched back since we came in Africa. We are hunters, we are sport shooters. We have a tradition since the Boer commandos that we are people of the open fields and people who can handle and carry guns. We are pro-gun. I would say in the broad sense you will see a lot of people carrying guns in Orania. It's part of who we are, it's part of our culture. On the one hand, it's also to say we take responsibility for our safety, to construct our own future. We take responsibility. On the one hand, because there's no one else. On the other hand, because it's our responsibility to look after ourselves.
We just finished our tour with Joost, and Siv has gone back to the house to do some research for our next interview, which is with Karl Boshoff, whose father was the founder of Orania. This has been a very different experience to the first time I was here, because the first time I was in control, I was the one asking all the questions, and that's not what this video is about. This video is about documenting Sivangezi's perspective and the way he's gone about asking the questions, the way he's conducted the interviews and his interactions with everyone has been very, very interesting to see. And I think he's been a bit shocked at how people have received him here. Very different, I think, to what he expected. But anyway, let's go for a swim.
Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well. I just wanted to take a quick second to thank this week's sponsor, Odoo. If you've been on my channel recently, you've probably heard me sharing one of the easiest ways to build a website for your business. Odoo's website builder is designed to make the process simple and stress-free. You don't need any coding skills or design experience. Just drag and drop and your website starts to come together. But Odoo isn't just a website builder. It's an all-in-one business management platform that connects everything in one place. When you use your mobile phone today, you'll notice you have apps that help you do everything you need. A calculator, a music player, camera, a notepad, and many others. One of the features I really like about Odoo is this modular approach. Just like on your mobile phone, you'll get to choose the apps you need to manage your business on Odoo. Whether you're managing sales, inventory, accounting, or HR, Odoo keeps it all streamlined and easy to use. No more switching between different softwares. It's all right there, working together to make your life easier, just like your mobile phone apps. And here's something great. Your first Odoo app is free forever. You can literally choose any one app and get started for free. Starting with a website also includes hosting, support, and even a free domain for your first year. No hidden costs, just a simple solution to get your business online and running smoothly. So if you've been putting off building your website and getting your business systems in order, I've got a link for you in my description so you can get started for free, or you can book a meeting with an Odoo expert and they'll help you through the process. Trust me, this will make your life so much easier and give you more time to focus on what really matters. But thank you so much, Odoo. Let's get back to the video.
Hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. Hoe gaat het? Precies. Nice to meet you, sir.
Please introduce yourself, your position, your name, your family heritage.
I am Karel Boshoff. I've been living in Orania full-time since 1997. I've been involved with the Orania movement from the early days.
I would be robbing myself if I didn't ask you, who are you related to? Because someone's very special you're related to.
Well, my father was Professor Karel Boshoff, a missionary first and then a theologian, academic theologian. And my mother was Anna Verwoerd. Her father was Hendrik Verwoerd. The Hendrik Verwoerd, if you would like, yeah. So I grew up with Dr. Verwoerd being my grandfather, being a close relation and, you know, offering a very unique angle on that difficult part of history.
What do you love the most about Orania?
Wow, the adventure of it. We are really, in a sense, you know, making history, doing things, establishing a new society, building new infrastructure, physically speaking, but also institutions, establishing a new kind of life. We are in 2025. We are challenged by the questions of globalism at this very point. We are not answering the questions of 1948 or 45 or whatever. We are addressing the issues of that is a wonderful adventure, to be at a place where you are so on top of it, so at the coal face of doing new things.
One of the most interesting things about Orania is that while it's part of South Africa, it operates with a significant degree of self-governance. The town is privately owned, and the residents elect their own officials who make decisions on matters like infrastructure, security, and local laws, rather than being governed by the state. Technically, people in Orania can vote in South Africa's elections, but most don't. They prefer to focus on their own local governance and handle things independently. For the people of Orania, this self-governance is incredibly important because it means they actually have a say in how their community is being run and what happens within it. Whereas in the rest of South Africa, it can sometimes feel like no matter what you say or do, nothing ever really changes.
Look forward in 20 years, where would you want Orania to be?
A medium-sized city, where all the different specialized professions and so on are operating, where there are publishing houses and theaters and newspapers and universities and all these kinds of things. If Orania could be that, it will be the essence and the focus of Afrikaner cultural life into the 22nd century as well.
Another intriguing aspect of Orania is its unique finance. The town operates its own bank, which is the largest cooperative bank in South Africa. Orania has also introduced its own currency, the Ora. While not an official currency, the Ora functions as a local coupon system, with 1 Ora being equal to 1 Rand. This system encourages local spending and fosters a sense of community identity.
Did you know your profitability as a surveyor is directly tied to the instruments you choose? Too many surveyors are stuck using outdated, overpriced equipment.
Or worse, spending hundreds of thousands on equipment just because it's what they're used to.
It's killing their margins,
slowing down projects,
and making it harder to scale.
And when they try to grow, the answer they result is more. More tools, more complexity, and more expenses. But that's not how sustainable growth happens. What if the path to growth isn't about spending more, but switching to smarter, more efficient systems? That is why we created an ecosystem designed for land surveyors who wants to grow sustainably. and why we use EMLID GNSS receiver as part of that model. At some server instruments in EMLID, you're not just getting a GNSS receiver, you're plugging into a system designed to make you more profitable, provide precise data and full support at a fraction of the cost of traditional brands. In fact, the moment surveyors switch to EMLID and plug into our ecosystem, they start reducing time in the field, increasing project capacity, and free up cash flow without overhauling their business. So, what does this mean for you? Higher margins, faster turnaround, and finally the freedom to say yes to bigger opportunities. It's not just about the tools.
It's about making smarter decisions that allow you to scale. Want to see how it all works? Click on the link to register for our free webinar training, How to Revolutionize Your Surveying Business and Double Your Growth Rate. We'll show you 5 traps keeping your surveying business stuck, a full walkthrough training of the EMLID GNSS system, and how switching to the right tools and ecosystem can unlock real profitable growth. So go ahead, click on the link, and we'll see you there.
Hello, Vuyo. I am Kaya, your integrated AI assistant.
Hello.
Welcome home. Hello, Vuyo. You look happy. What is that in your hand?
It's KFC.
Good morning, Vuyo. Have a great day.
Thank you, Kaya.
Welcome home. Good morning, Vuyo. Hello, Vuyo. I've made everyone happy. Hello, Vuyo. There is traffic ahead. Rerouting.
Kaya,
Proceed to the route. Turn left. Turn right. We have reached our destination.
my AI. Good night, Kaya.
Goodbye, Vuyo.
Kaya?
Hello, Vuyo.
I can taste and touch and see and feel I'm alive.
So do you think Orania is misunderstood by people in South Africa and overseas?
I think it's mostly misunderstood in South Africa very often because it is associated with previous kinds of policies of apartheid and all those things. And whenever for the patterns of living in South Africa, people come around and see white people doing menial work in Orania, they think, wow, what's going on? Is this a special kind of racism or whatever? Whilst at the meantime, this is an answer to apartheid, a rejection of the kind of racist expectations that was fed in that era.
Let's simplify it down to questions that I know everyone wants to hear. Are black people allowed in Orania?
Yes, there's no race criterion to access to Orania. At the same time, while the answer is yes, Orania is also a focused Afrikaner community. And there's a very spontaneous reason why for 30 years black people haven't come to live in Orania. They are just historically not Afrikaners. They are not interested in the same things. They're not happy about the same things. And they don't participate in this cultural community, as there are very, very few, if any, white people in rural isiXhosa or isiZulu communities, which are all over South Africa. So by saying yes, I'm obviously saying something unexpected, because the reality has much more dimensions than just this one dimension that is locked in that question.
So we agree that being Afrikaner is not just your race, right?
Absolutely.
So if you and your wife had adopted a black child and you raised this black child as an Afrikaner from eendag until he's 21, technically is that kid not Afrikaans? Because you speak about culture.
Yeah.
Culturally, he should be Afrikaans. Would he be welcome into the town?
Hypothetically, it is exactly true, and hypothetically, yes. But we need to address that question when we meet it concretely.
Okay.
So the reality is the test. What we are doing is not defining the exclusion.
Okay.
We are defining the inclusion. We are defining those matters that attract people to Orania. There's nowhere in our statute something that says because, or if you are black, or if you are Muslim, or if you are this or that. We have been sort of defined quite clearly. The perception is that we try to keep other people out. Wow, can we not address that perception?
You try to bring people in.
We try to yeah, exactly.
Okay. If you had a daughter, would you let your daughter marry a black person?
I have a daughter. If she wants to, that's not the kind of things that one can prescribe. We'll see. I experienced marriage as a challenge. Even within my own culture, I think it's difficult to have a multicultural marriage, but there are people who do it, that love it, that is successful. That's great.
Yes or no?
I cannot reject it.
Okay. Do you dislike racists?
Yes, I do. I associate with a more open approach. I respect people. I don't like when other people don't respect people above, over the whole spectrum of who they are. And in fact, I'm interested. I'm always liking to get behind the thinking of other people, other cultures, other continents, other places.
Do you see me as an equal to you?
You know, I don't know you, but I believe so, yes. And in principle, definitely. Okay. In principle, as a human being before God, there's no question.
As we were wrapping up and getting ready to leave Karl Boshoff's office, we realized there was one important question we had forgotten to ask. So just before we walked out, Siv turned to him and asked,
as an Afrikaans person, do you consider yourself African?
Yes, definitely, and always have. This is our home. This is where we as a people was born. Not as individuals alone, but as a people. We don't come from Europe or anywhere else as a people. As a people, we are part of what grew out of Africa, and that's where we got our name from.
How do you feel when people tell you to go home?
No, I'm home. How should I feel? We're here. This is our place.
We came to Orania on a mission to bridge the gap of understanding between people from completely different backgrounds that share the same home. And I think we've succeeded in that. But there was one other, far more pressing question we still needed to answer. You see, during South Africa's last elections, one resident of Orania cast a vote for the EFF, led by Julius Malema. And this whole time, we've been secretly on a mission to find him. And I think we finally cracked the case.
Did you hear about the one person who voted for EFF in Orania? There was one guy.
Yes, like
one person.
Everyone was talking about it.
There was one person that voted for the EFF here. And we're just asking, do you know where they are? Do you know who they are?
No, I don't know who they are or where they are. We just think that people just wanted to make like a big thing out of it, just to get attention. I think so, but I don't know.
Do you know who it was?
I don't know who it was, no.
Do you have any suspicion?
No.
But what are the chances of anyone voting for EFF here?
My conspiracy theory is like, I don't know, I think it's someone that voted EFF to like, I don't know, just cause more problems. I don't know.
One person voted for EFF in this whole Oranje.
I don't know.
We're looking for him.
Okay.
Have you heard about him?
I've heard about the story, but I don't know where he is.
Okay, we're gonna find him. We're gonna find him.
100%.
Thank you, Vincent. Have you found the person who voted for EFF?
From our side, we definitely did not try to find that person. It's his privilege.
Yes, it's true. He's allowed to vote for EFF.
Yes, he can vote what he wants.
I cannot come to Oranje without asking this question. I cannot. There was one person in Oranje who voted EFF. Do you know who that person is?
Yes.
Do you know who it is?
Yes.
Huh?
No.
Do you?
That was me.
No, you're lying.
I'm an accelerationist. I want things to get going.
Okay, there was a person who voted for EFF. Do they know who it is?
No, but we have a pretty good guess who it probably is.
Was it a joke?
It was not a joke, as far as I know. It was most probably people from outside Oranje who comes to this polling station in Oranje. Probably farms surrounding Oranje. Some of the workers come and vote here, and that was probably what it was.
Now that we solved that mystery, it was finally time to leave Oranje.
We've just left Oranje, and Siv, I want to know, was it what you expected it to be?
No way. It was a conundrum. It was confusing, many positives, but I think there was a feeling that didn't feel right. And I think that's just a lack of diversity. I think they have everything, the growth, the ethics, the safety, but they just lack diversity and like an open-mindedness to others. It's just our way or the highway. But they have every right to do that. It's their place.
I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to learn more about Oranje, you can check out the documentary I made the last time I was there.
With Google Workspace, you can create a Gmail account with your own domain and branding, helping your business look professional in any inbox. That's business email made easy with Google Workspace.
Two weeks after young officers ousted Burkina Faso's transitional president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré was sworn in as president.
Burkina Faso and its president has been in the news for some time now. The news calls the country unstable, outsiders are calling it unsafe, and there has been so much conflicting news online that nobody knows what to believe about the country. Burkina Faso is a landlocked country with many years of political instability, terrorism, and foreign control, which has left many hopeless, with nearly 40% of the population living below the poverty line. How can Africa's fourth largest producer of gold be one of the poorest countries on the continent?
You know, if you take the land of Burkina, the underground is gold.
At the center of it all is a 36-year-old soldier named
Ibrahim Traoré,
who rose to power in 2022, right in the midst of the storm. Since then, many have come to see him not just as a revolutionary, but as somebody worth protecting even with their lives.
If someone came here and is not a good person around this area of our president, we know the person.
To some, he's a rebel with a gun, and to others, is the second coming of Sankara. Whatever you choose to believe, he's gotten the full attention of the continent, and now he has mine too.
Ibrahim Traoré don't take the president's salary.
Really?
Yes. Ibrahim Traoré is a captain. He only take captain salary.
Up till now?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Realizing how very little I knew about the country, its people, or the man behind the headlines, I decided to come here myself to explore the country, to speak with the people who live here, and to hopefully hear from the man himself.
Welcome to Burkina Faso!
This was my first time in Burkina Faso, and like many African countries I visited, I didn't know what to expect, so I stepped out into the city to feel the energy for myself. What surprised me as I started to explore the city was the way people moved around. It was far from what I would typically expect from a country under military rule, and it didn't feel like this country was in crisis.
One of the fascinating things I've also seen so far being here is that you see like even women riding motorcycles.
Yes. C'est le minimum pour un Burkinabé de savoir rouler en moto. En fait, ici, il y a comment on appelle ça? C'est un rituel en fait que nous avons ici. Lorsque tu as le certificat, tu as d'abord un vélo. Tu vas à l'école avec et tout. Et en ce moment-là, tu apprends à rouler en fait à moto jusqu'à ce que tu en aies marre, quoi.
This land was once known as the Upper Volta, a former French colony.
Upper Volta, August 5th, 1960. Independence activities began with the arrival at Ouagadougou.
They got their independence in 1960, but real change didn't come until 1983 when Thomas Sankara took power.
Utiliser ces immenses potentialités pour développer l'Afrique parce que notre sous-sol sont riches.
He was young, bold, and Pan-African. He renamed the country Burkina Faso, which means the land of the upright people. But in 1987, he was assassinated. What followed was a cycle of decades of political shifts, coups, and power struggles. Then in 2022, another young soldier stepped forward.
Tenons à informer la population que la situation est sous contrôle et que les choses sont en train de rentrer progressivement.
Captain Ibrahim Traoré has been declared the new head of the West African country.
He took power at 34, making him Africa's youngest head of state, and his biggest promise was not to please the West, but to do right by his people.
The thing is, Ibrahim Traoré is the leader. He is not trying to give you an order. He shows you the way.
Et c'est grâce au capitaine Ibrahim Traoré qui fait que le Burkina Faso reste encore vivant. Parce que si Ibrahim Traoré n'était pas venu, aujourd'hui on n'en parlerait pas du Burkina Faso.
When Traoré came into power, he expelled French troops, suspended foreign media like France 24, restricted foreign NGOs, aligned more closely with Russia and neighboring anti-Western states, and made it clear that in the new Burkina Faso, even foreigners, including white people, will be subject to the same laws as everyone else.
The French airlines were landing in Burkina, and they've put our country on riot. That was chasing actually investors out of the country. So Ibrahim said, okay, no problem. Your companies that is here are here. For example, let's say French airline. So you're not allowed to land in Burkina anymore. So they felt it. They came back to say, no, can we land again in your countries? So he said, first go and say that our countries are green online, then we can now discuss. So the president brought our own airline back. We didn't have any plane, to be honest.
Also now there's
airline, Burkina Faso airline, that can take you to most African countries. When it will get bigger, we'll go everywhere.
And just like that, the Sankara comparisons began. This led me to the memorial, which was recently renovated by the Ibrahim Traoré administration.
Donc c'est le bâtiment dans lequel Sankara a été assassiné. Donc ce bâtiment-là, c'est un bâtiment sacré. Parce que c'est dans ce bâtiment que Sankara va prendre de 1983 à 1987 pour travailler.
This exact spot was where he was actually assassinated.
Donc c'est-à-dire lorsque Sankara tombait, il a d'abord tombé sur ses deux genoux et non content de tomber, il a pris le soin de fixer ceux qui l'ont tiré. Il a pris le soin de soulever son poing gauche avant de tomber front contre le sol. C'est à cause de ça la statue, c'est la main gauche qui est soulevée. C'est le tout dernier symbole que Sankara va laisser à l'humanité. Donc, voilà, Sankara, sit down here at period. Lui, il était assis là, Sankara était assis là.
Oh wow, here. So then he came outside when he saw.
Et quand ils sont venus, Sankara va se lever et il va sortir par là.
c'est la Jeep militaire de Thomas Sankara. Il faut dire que c'était à l'époque, lui, dans ça, il montait et il tournait dans la ville de Ouagadougou.
Wow. Guys, check out this statue, man. This is the hero. This is really high up, though.
Utiliser ces immenses potentialités pour développer l'Afrique parce que notre sol, notre sous-sol sont riches.
As I moved across the city, I noticed CCTV cameras mounted at intersections, on roads, and in public spaces. They were not just for show as they worked to keep traffic offenders in check.
Don't respect my bed, the traffic light or the rules put by the president will be punished.
How will you be punished? What will they tell
You
you?
may clean the roads since the morning time until the afternoon time. You will be cleaning the roads. You will be gathering the garbage, something like that.
Tout le monde a peur de faire en fait une bêtise. Donc tu prends tes précautions pour éviter de faire des bêtises.
What about if you're white?
Here there is no difference. Even last time they catch a Chinese.
Yeah.
Yes, and he was cleaning the roads. People were laughing.
Really?
Yes.
So
there is
everybody is equal.
everybody.
Le Burkina Faso vit. Aujourd'hui, la corruption. Aujourd'hui, c'est la bonne gouvernance. Aujourd'hui, c'est la liberté d'expression. Aujourd'hui, c'est la liberté tout court.
As we're just driving past, we saw these guys walking. They're filling up the potholes. And this is one of the initiatives of the government.
Ce qu'on peut dire, c'est de par le passé, c'était des activités qui étaient menées par des entreprises. Maintenant, avec la venue de Ibrahim Traoré, il a voulu que ces petits travaux-là, ça soit fait par l'administration elle-même.
Most of the roads used to be untarred, but now and the ones that are not tarred or that shoes, they are repairing them. There's still some roads inside that are not tarred yet, but guessing it's a gradual process as always.
Tell you there is a lot of places that we didn't imagine that there will be roads in those places, but now you can drive directly.
I wanted to know what it was like building a business here, so I met the CEO of Let's Go, an electric car company based in Burkina Faso, who says the new administration has given his business a fresh new start.
Did you live outside the country before?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was in Turkey before studying. Coming here was a challenge for me, but what really made me want to come back is the fact that the regime changed. We had hope that came onto us. Our president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, was the real one that inspired me.
In setting up business, has there been any other challenges generally from your point of view? Yeah.
Because to be honest, I started with 12 cars. The day I launched the app, that day we had as much as 10,000 demand of cars that day.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm sitting with 12 cars and I have 10,000 demand. So I told my drivers, good luck.
Good luck.
I sat down and I drank the coffee. I was like, damn, that's
a lot.
It's a lot. At first, it was really hard to satisfy the clients. Yeah, so they were complaining a lot, but I understand. I mean, to set up a business that needs a lot of resources, it's not really easy. Now we have enough cars coming soon, because as you know, the cars are assembled here in Burkina.
The cars are assembled here?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Is it assembled by people from here?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So instead of importing the car made already, they will assemble the cars here, part by part, which is we will reduce the price and also the cost of energy when it comes to consumption.
What's the meaning of Itawa? Does it have a meaning?
Yeah, it's a village
It's a village. Okay, it's the name of the village.
It's the name of the village. So these are the models. I think every cars have a story behind
them. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a mountain in Burkina.
The name, this Tenakuru.
Yeah, Tenakuru is the mountain.
Okay, it's a mountain. So they are all even named after.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Don't buy another pair of glasses until you've seen what this new invention can do. These self-adjustable glasses are taking the world by storm. They let you achieve a perfect 20/20 vision at any distance, which means you won't have to visit your eye doctor ever again. They were created by an optician who dedicated his life to providing a solution for myopia, hyperopia, and astigmatism. The story of John Mayer's discovery began 3 years ago after thousands of eyeglass prescriptions. He noticed a trend. As people get older, they need to change their glasses way too often. And when you're nearsighted and farsighted, you need to have 2 pairs of glasses with you. But having to carry 2 pairs of glasses all the time is downright annoying, not to mention quite expensive too. John also discovered another big issue. Almost all spectacle wearers suffered from eye strain and fatigue. It turned out a lot of his clients were wearing glasses with an incorrect prescription. John teamed up with an optical engineer to fix these issues and make everyone's life easier. After more than 2 years of research and development and another 10 months of testing, this adjustable glasses was born. This is an innovative pair of glasses. You can adjust all by yourself, and it doesn't matter if you are nearsighted or farsighted. It works through a new creation called dual lens technology. With it, you can adjust each lens individually and have a broad diopter of -6:2+3. This adjustable glasses are made of high-quality materials and are very durable. They can be used in everyday activities while experiencing a perfect 20/20 vision at any distance. They come with a flexible frame, adjustable nose pads, and impact-resistant lenses. Use these glasses to read, drive, watch TV, work, and do sports. John wants as many people as possible to know about these new glasses so they can leave their bad sight problems in the past. That's why he teamed up with an investor and managed to secure $5 million in funding to bring his product to market. But what he didn't expect was his product going viral on social media. Today it's used by more than 600,000 people who are enjoying a perfect 20/20 vision. If you want similar results, all while saving 50% off the original price, here's what you need to do. Click the link below to visit the official website and get yours while supplies last. The founder of these glasses is so confident in his product that he is offering a 30-day money-back guarantee with no questions asked, which means you can return the product within 30 days for a full refund. This is a great deal and it could disappear at any moment, so act fast. Grab yours before this amazing offer is gone. Click the link below to claim your adjustable glasses today with a 50% discount.
So this is the charger that it comes with. In here, you just plug it at home.
Yeah.
You charge your car. This one takes you 4 hours, $5 to fill it in terms of consumption.
How much is this one?
11,000 euros.
Do you guys also have this thing, like, you know, the way they have it in Europe, like, you know, you pay small. Does that work here?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys
with
have that too?
Well, yeah, with some banks. Some banks have agreed for that.
He took us on a tour of real estate projects, charging stations, and smooth roads connecting neighborhoods that were once hard to reach.
Is the mall open yet? Or
no, it's under construction, but it's almost done.
So this mall construction started within the past 2 years. We're trying to check out their apartments. Apparently they have apartments here. Yeah, I'll come and buy one of this one. What do you guys think? Just pick one.
So they furnished it as well.
Ooh, this is nice.
It's not bad, it's good. So this is like $100,000 to purchase a house like that.
Okay.
Yeah. But there is developments that you can do. Like that means you can pay rent, pay, and until it's fully yours.
Oh, like the mortgage, like they have it.
Exactly.
Oh wow, you guys have that here. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What about Airbnb? How much is it per night here?
$120.
So if you want to stay here per night, $120.
Yeah.
fancy.
Ça, c'est le salon.
It looks fancy.
Okay, this is the living room.
Ooh, okay. So this is how many bedrooms?
4.
Wow. This apartment looks really beautiful. An apartment like this in this area, because I can see it's very close to
the monument.
The monument. How much does it cost?
Actually, all these are sold out, but it's...
The whole building sold out?
Sold out.
Wow.
The 4-bedroom apartments are sold out.
Oh, okay.
So it's 400,000 euros.
Oh, okay, 400,000 euros. That's like $440,000.
Yeah.
Are there opportunities for businesses here generally, and how easy is it for foreigners from Africa to build businesses here?
It's actually not hard, for example, to set up a business here. And how lucrative it is, I would say it depends on what you invest in. You need to fill a hole. You need to actually
solve a problem,
and there is many problems left by the previous powers. So if you want to invest in a country like Burkina, who has also good politics about agriculture, I would advise you to invest in agriculture.
Moi, je m'appelle M. Nikiema Salifo. Bonne arrivée au centre de formation professionnelle Banganoma. Ici, on fait la pisciculture, la maraîchage, l'agriculture. C'est tout d'un système intégré qu'on fait. On utilise l'eau de poisson et on fait l'agriculture avec ça, le riz, le blé, les papayers, les maïs, l'ananas, les poulets, les pintards, les bœufs. On fait un peu de tout ce qui concerne local. Les poissons importés de la Chine. Et ces poissons, aujourd'hui, les gens en consomment beaucoup. Et le problème qui est là aujourd'hui, c'est avec des hormones qui transforment et ce n'est pas bon pour la santé. Et c'est beaucoup de millions, des milliards que le Burkina Faso dépense chaque année pour importer le poisson. Et maintenant ici, ceux qui sont là, qui produisent ça, ce sont des déplacés internes. Ça veut dire quand ils sont là, ils produisent, ils gagnent leur vie. Voilà. Avec cette solution, on crée de la richesse, on crée de l'emploi et surtout, on fait bien manger bio et sain.
So as you see, the students, these are actually people that come from like kind of refugees.
Oh wow!
That are coming from all these unstable places in Burkina. So after a year, they will be going to the army. Some of them come here to learn about agriculture and all these things. Others also go to other enterprises, but the main one is here. So every month, 150 people come here to learn about agriculture.
Every month, 150 people?
Yeah, and there is a rotation.
Wow.
So when they finish, some of them want to go themselves to the army.
What about the other ones? Are there any ones that maybe they're going to set up farms for and then they can keep farming?
Yes, it's a choice, but most of them also have the pain, the grudge, out of like what
happened to their families?
Yeah, to the families and stuff, so yeah.
They want to go and fight.
They want to go and fight.
How to use fillable forms in PDF Filler. Navigate between fields by clicking on the marked field, clicking the arrow icons that appear above the selected field, or navigate with your keyboard using the Shift tab, Return, or the arrow keys. Add text by simply typing in a selected field. You can also check selection boxes by clicking them, or pressing the spacebar when one is selected. Selecting a signature field will automatically open in the Signature Manager. Just create your signature and it will appear in the field where it can then be adjusted. Fillable forms aren't just limited to predetermined fields. You will have full access to all of PDF Filler's powerful.
I wanted to see for myself how this new regime was shaping the lives of young people, and there was no better place to feel that impact than on a university campus. However, before we proceed, here's a quick message from our sponsor. If you're a traveler like me, you know that whenever you travel to a new country, your SIM card stops working. And for my trip to Burkina Faso, I had to get a new SIM card before I could access the internet. This process is very stressful, and there are times where I've gotten stuck in a country where they don't speak the same language as me. I've also had cases where I couldn't book a taxi or book accommodation just because I didn't have access to the internet. And even on one occasion, I almost got scammed at the airport by a vendor who wanted to sell me a fake SIM. Well, that's until I discovered the Nomad eSIM service app, which connects me to the internet without needing physical SIM cards. It works in over 200 destinations worldwide, giving me the best rates and eliminating all my roaming fees. All I needed to do was to download the Nomad eSIM app from the Android or iOS store, select my country, choose a data plan, select the number of days I need it for, input the discount code, and click activate. And just like that, I was connected to the internet. The Nomad eSIM has been a game changer for me, making my travels a lot more enjoyable. And I'm thankful to them for sponsoring this video. If you love to support this channel and elevate your travel experience by getting an eSIM to make your trip more enjoyable, click the link below and enter the code TIREIKNOW at checkout, and you get a 20% discount off any plan and destination. Now, let's jump right back into the video.
I want you to just tell me, what's it like living here at this moment now?
I can say life here has changed now because right now we have a president who is really fighting for us. 5 years ago or 6 years ago, life was not like that. Now we can say Burkina Faso is going forward.
Right now at the university, we got many opportunities like the Wi-Fi.
Oh, you have Wi-Fi?
Yeah,
now?
we have Wi-Fi.
You didn't have Wi-Fi before?
No.
Here is the university restaurant. In the past, we used to say the queue here.
Okay.
Here is full of people, they want to eat. But now, when we say even there, the food is ameliorated.
You mean the food is better?
Yeah, it's better. It's more better than the past.
With 100, you can have food. But outside the university, at least 500.
Even if you don't have money, there are some ways you can try to go. And after, if you get money to pay the fees.
Oh, you mean like they have like loans?
Yeah.
That they can give student loans?
Yes, they can
They'll pay for your education.
They'll pay for education.
Then later on you can pay
yes,
back.
You can
oh,
pay
wow.
Back. Yeah.
Before I came, they said there was like, you know, like it's dangerous to come here. Like there's war, this one, that one.
This is what other people think.
Yeah.
But Burkina Faso is different. When you come here, you see that different reality. Really, we are very happy here. We don't choose the situation that we are living right now. We don't choose it. This is an imposed situation, but we try to live it out. We said adversity will come, but we need to adapt to it.
In most African countries at the moment, when young students are going to school, when they graduate, their first plan is they want to leave Africa and maybe go to Europe or go to France to go and study or go and work.
Yes.
Do people here also have that same reality, or do they want to stay in Burkina Faso?
Yeah, of course, many people in Burkina Faso, they are thinking that in other country they can have what they cannot have here. But let me tell you, it's a lie. The white people, when they came here, they used to lie. They used to turn our mind. They used to say, no, in Africa you cannot get, but it's a lie. Here we can get everything. They came here and they take our
resources.
Our resources, and they go there, they transform it. For example, when you see in our neighbor Ivory Coast, for example, the cocoa of Ivory Coast, the white people take it and they go back to do chocolate, but we don't know the price of chocolate.
Oh, I get what you mean.
It's
your cocoa.
Yeah, it's our cocoa. The same people we are working there is the younger people who live here for them.
Parce que je me sens bien ici. Aller à l'extérieur et puis aller souffrir là-bas, c'est pas pour moi en fait. J'ai développé quelque chose, je donne un plus à mon pays et je suis à l'aise, mes parents sont à côté. Si j'ai envie de pleurer avec maman, je peux aller pleurer rapidement. J'ai pas besoin de l'appeler en FaceTime ou bien en WhatsApp. J'ai tout ici, pourquoi je vais aller voir ailleurs en fait?
We should stay here because here we have everything. We don't envy them.
As a young person here, what are some of the challenges you face?
No, it is not easy, like everywhere. It is not easy. But if you need to succeed, you need to work. A challenge
the sun. You notice it, right?
Yeah, bro. I'm sweating this morning, man. Today is 47 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, the sun is hard, really hard.
So if I stay here for like 2 weeks now,
you will change for sure. You will black as mine.
We don't have oil. As Nigeria has oil, we don't have oil, we don't have the sea, we have many things, but we have the sun in abundance. That's the thing we have a lot, the sun. So we have at least 9 months full sun, and we have maybe 3 months of rain.
What about solar farms? Are there plans to build like stuff like solar farms?
There is actually a factory that does solar panels.
Oh, really? In
Burkina, yeah.
But not in this city.
No, but it's not really far.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. The difficulties can come to be like an advantage.
Advantage. Yeah, true. Exactly. I like that.
Yeah. To be able to purchase solar panels outside of Burkina, you need to buy everything that is made here. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So once it's finished,
then you can
buy.
So that way the money stays in the country.
Exactly. It turns.
Wow. That makes these are some very amazing initiatives.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a big part of Burkina Faso that I've noticed is everybody here knows how to ride a bike. Male, female, young, old, they're all riding bicycles. And I think it reminds me of how they live in Amsterdam. Amsterdam is a city that has more bicycles than human beings itself. So that's the vibe I'm getting from here, because if it's not a bicycle, it's a motorbike. The bikes are not even secured or locked with anything. People just park their bikes, and you're probably going to meet it when they come back. See bikes everywhere.
If you don't park your bicycle or your motorbike in the parking, you will lose it.
You will lose it?
Yes.
Somebody will just take it?
Yes, take it and go.
But now that it's here, how do people know which bike is for who?
They have tickets. If I notice on the bike and bicycles, you have numbers. So if you want to take your bicycle, you have to show the ticket.
So that's the system?
Yes, it is a sort of control. We are on the way to Mamsang's place. Mamsang.
What's the way of Mamsang?
Mamsang is a contraction of the name Mama Sankara.
Mama Sankara.
Yes.
Interesting. The reveal.
The reveal, yes.
Boom. Oh, wow.
So, there you have the gore, the meat and the zamne.
Martin.
I need to see your face when you will eat it.
I feel like I said to you.
I need to see your expression, you know.
Are you ready? This is made with beans. Reminds me of moi from Nigeria. It's not bad. It won't be my first pick though, because I like rice and stuff, but it's not bad.
Bienvenue à Das Air. Nous utilisons de la matière locale burkinabé surtout. Le beurre de qualité, beurre de coco, l'huile de moringa, l'huile de coco également, mais qui est utilisée beaucoup dans l'entretien des cheveux afro.
How easy is it to start a business in Burkina Faso?
Si tu as l'argent, c'est beaucoup plus facile. Mais il faut avoir l'idée également. Les deux vont ensemble. Tu as l'argent, c'est vrai, mais si tu n'as pas la bonne idée, ça ne va pas marcher.
There's no government stopping you or anything like that? Oh, okay.
Au contraire, le gouvernement même vous aide, surtout les petites entreprises comme la nôtre en fait. Il nous aide surtout, que ce soit au niveau des impôts ou que ce soit au niveau des financements pour vous aider à créer un projet. Au contraire, même, ils sont là même pour vous aider en fait.
One thing I also wanted to know, you know, in Africa, one of the problems we also have is speed of setting up a business. Did you have that problem?
Not the speed, because the president mentioned that he doesn't want that long process to establish any business. You come open your company, if it's valid, you start working.
How long? How many weeks, days?
Une semaine. Si tu as l'argent.
You can open a business in 1 week?
Yes, parce que en fait, ici, la seule chose qu'on te demande, c'est la création d'entreprise. Donc, tu as tes papiers et tout, tu peux déposer à la maison de l'entreprise. Généralement, en une semaine, maxi, vraiment, s'il n'y a pas eu de problème, c'est une semaine, tu as tes papiers.
It could be longer because, for example, I'm in the pipe industry too. So that process is a bit longer because, as you know, you need certifications. You need to be sure that what you invest in won't harm the population. But it's much shorter than before. Before it could take you 3 years to establish a business.
Really?
Yeah.
I've spoken to so many people while I've been here. All the people I've spoken to, they always have like positive stuff to say. But I want to have a balanced view. So I think the first question I'll ask, as a business person, what are some of the challenges? Life is not just sweet, totally.
It's true.
There are challenges as somebody who lives here too, as a person. So I would like to know what those challenges are as an entrepreneur.
The main thing, is the finance. We feel like as entrepreneurs, businessmen, we feel like this loan thing is like a big thing. Is like complicated. It's not even possible.
What are the interest? Is the interest rate high?
Very high.
So getting that funding from the banks is a big problem. Well, is it better now from your own point of view?
I will tell you the truth. I think even our president, he feels that it's very hard for the young people with the banking. And it's some even them to do something. I think if you see this conference is calling the banks, you guys do something to help the young entrepreneurs or something. Do something.
Is it expensive to live in Burkina Faso? Paying for rent, paying for light, electricity, shop, all of that?
It's still a little bit higher. But if you compare to other countries like Senegal or Cote d'Ivoire or even Nigeria, the cost of life here is cheaper, really cheaper.
You can have a house here for 50,000 per month.
Per month, 50,000.
Yeah, 50,000. But in Ivory cost 30,000, the minimum.
But you said here 50,000.
Yeah, 15. Sorry, 15,000. Sorry, 15,000.
Donc je disais que la vie était raisonnable selon moi ici parce que j'ai fait le Sénégal et je trouve que la vie là-bas est vraiment chère comparativement ici. Que ce soit l'électricité, que ce soit l'eau ou même pour manger. Il faut savoir qu'ici, même avec 500 francs, même avec 200 francs, tu manges très bien à midi et tu rentres dormir.
Yeah, right now things are more expensive because they are taking taxes on everything for the war.
There are additional taxes we have to pay to support government efforts.
And people are willing to pay those things?
Yes, people are paying it with joy.
C'est plus cher, mais on accepte. Même avec les efforts de gain, nous on paye ça. Parce qu'on connaît la suite. Et on sait un jour aussi ça va payer. Voilà. Puis il y a des taxes que nous on ne paye pas, mais maintenant nous on les paye par volontariat. On est content même de ça, sans vous mentir.
On the beer, there are additional taxes we have to pay to support government efforts. So we are the only one country you can drink beer and say you're patriotic,
So as I'm like this, I'm contributing to one hospital in the city. Let me take a sip. I've contributed. I've done my part as a patriotic citizen.
Luna ton we memela no patali bondi patali dibin ditinani la ton datam te tienga na develop moderninga ya ton moto develop de ton tienga ki te ton pam bilbil vendite ya jardina sa ya kobo ya gulro mam ya mam gunda me mam koda me la mam patin dik mam gulro ne mam koda panna fa mam somay la luna awani ko pleda ni himbe Ibrahim wani ko tirmenga titwe naftondo nakata mam yela nanta mam parce que hanta mam neda nanta mam ana developer me yinugo le luna wa ton patin ya ngati awute ton pa mi ne obelam tini sale ya way ka tapire wani me hanna man ton tie kam ta zininga la ka ana kenera no maton le luna an wani na kende ninga For example, to coca for 10 man the minigeri. For example, man the minigeri for man the machoneri. For one tell no to Budafa for 10 to 1. For Nuga to him for 10 to my sofa. A nation of 40 for 2.
On voit une nette différence dans ce qui se passe dans l'ancien gouvernement et actuellement. Niveau terroriste et tout, on n'entend plus parler comme avant, c'est déjà un bon point. Maintenant, ce qui se dit sur les réseaux sociaux et ce qui est vraiment vrai, moi je préfère que quand tu es au pays, c'est quand tu viens découvrir en fait, tu viens à la découverte, tu viens apprendre en fait comment le pays vit. C'est mieux que de rester sur le net et puis être là en train de divaguer.
On social media, there's a lot of like misinformation, propaganda. Somebody told me this morning that the social media is not allowed here, that people are not free to express themselves. How true is that?
No, that's totally that's a false thing, man. Yeah. I have my Instagram, my Facebook. I can post whatever I want. I don't like. I mean, everything is. We have free speech here.
It's good, like people like you are coming. The courage to come first to see, not what you are hearing. And you know, nowadays with TikTok and everything, if they want to just set something false, it's easy. 1 minute, just go to the lab, those Burkina Faso like that. But you are here, you can see.
There was even something I saw that they said, I wanted to confirm if that was true, because they saw him with Putin.
Okay.
They said you guys have sold all your resources now to Putin.
No, that's the opposite of what we did.
Okay, what happened?
We took back our resources. You know, it's Canadian and French companies that was owning our gold mines.
Yeah.
So when he came, he revised all the things because we were getting only 10 to 20% out of our own resources.
Really?
Because we didn't have the material to actually take it out.
Take it out.
But now we purchased the material to take it, and we took it back. So we sell at the price that we want abroad.
Oh, wow.
I mean, yeah. Russia offered us a transfer of technology and brain
information, knowledge. Yeah?
So that's what the president asked about, basically.
Oh, okay.
He said, we won't ask you for help or anything. We want what you have in your head. If you can help us develop ourselves, it's okay. We're not asking for nothing. If we want something from you, we will buy it. So we have things here that they need. We have cotton. Cotton also, we have like one of the biggest producers in Africa.
Of cotton?
Cotton, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So they buy our cotton, we buy our stuff as well.
And you guys are the ones deciding your prices now, not...
Yeah.
On our way back, my guide mentioned something to me that I found truly shocking. At a roundabout not far from the presidential villa, people were lying on the bare ground. They were not homeless or stranded. They were there by choice, forming a human shield around the president's office.
We are here at this place with some people who sleep on the road to protect our president. We can see police protecting the people too. So everybody protecting everybody and everybody protecting the president.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
In the morning, everyone go to his job. But in the night, we come here to sleep to protect our president. Because we know that a lot of persons want to kill him because he is a revolutionary, he is Pan-Africanist.
But I can already see that they are already soldiers. So what do you guys want to do? You don't have weapons. How do you want to protect the president?
We don't have weapons, but we can use our mouth. We use our mouth to talk. We can cry and call those people who are having the weapons to come and help us.
Looking for a way to own a vehicle without relying on traditional financing? At No Finance Cars, we've pioneered the vehicle rent-to-buy model and helped over 25,000 South Africans become proud vehicle owners.
Hi, my name is Mohammed Sidat. I'm the dealer principal at No Finance Cars. Here, we make it our mission to get you on the road with ease, whether it's finding the perfect car or ensuring you get the service you deserve.
Why choose us? We offer the largest selection of vehicles with no kilometer restrictions. And after just 54 months, you can own the car you love. Plus, you can upgrade or downgrade every 18 months. Struggling to get finance approval? With us, it's easy. No banks, no loans, just straightforward approval with no middlemen and no fuss. And our benefits don't stop there. Enjoy roadside assistance, accident and theft protection, and the freedom to terminate your agreement at any point. With branches in Johannesburg, Cape Town and Durban, we've got you covered nationwide. And in Gauteng, our in-house workshop offers free labour on the first service, with parts charged at cost, handled by mechanics with over 40 years of experience.
At No Finance Cars, it's not just about driving, it's about driving away with confidence.
We're more than a car company. We're your key to independence. Ready to hit the road? Let's make it happen.
Farm in the wild, raise animals and harvest crops, make food for yourself and for sale. Build a flourishing city with factories and farms. Craft everything you need for travels.
Mais aujourd'hui, là, la runda, ils vont passer sur nos corps avant de toucher à un cheveu de eBay. Qu'il y a beaucoup de désinformation qui est répandue sur les réseaux sociaux et dans les médias. Quand vous voyez des médias comme France 24 ou TV5 qui célèbrent un Africain, il faut savoir que cette personne travaille pour eux, elle ne travaille pas pour nous.
C'est un leader, il comprend les enjeux, il connaît très bien les impérialistes. C'est pourquoi il nous avait dit de nous préparer à une guerre de haute intensité. Ils n'ont pas besoin de nous, mais ils ont besoin de ce que nos terres possèdent comme des richesses. Nous n'allons pas les laisser faire, nous sommes en plein 21e siècle.
I don't know how to explain what I'm seeing behind me. I've never seen something like this where citizens of the country would decide to every single day stay out at night because they love their president or because they want to protect their president.
If someone came here and is not a good person around this area of our president, we know the person.
So this road leads all the way to the president's house.
This was loyalty, and suddenly I started asking myself, what is this man doing differently that has made all these people want to lay down their lives for him?
Shows us the way. Just guys, let's do that together. And it's because of that every Burkinabe will stay always with this person.
He allows you to tell him what you don't like. For example, if you complain about one sector, he brings you onto that and he shows you exactly the difficulties and the work they've been doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
After a few days in Burkina Faso, I've come to see that the real strength of this country isn't in its gold or its government. It's in its people, in the way they show up for each other, in the pride and hope they carry, and in how deeply they believe in the future they are trying to build.
Based on the trajectory of the country, based on where the country is at now, you feel like all your dreams can be achieved in Burkina Faso?
Yes, of course. I don't have doubts about it.
Actually, I can say one of my most dreams is to see my country out of terrorism, out of my country live peacefully because I know that with peace we can do many things. Even if my dream is to be a lawyer, for example, or a doctor, for example, without peace I cannot do it. Then the first dream is peace in Burkina Faso, and after that I know I will do many things. You are here today. Come in 4 or 5 years, you will see Burkina Faso is not the same. It's not what the same. It's different because we are on the way.
Throughout my years of traveling, I've never visited a country with such unanimous support for its leader. Although everyone still faces challenges, the main consensus was that there was hope and everyone could see the work being done.
Mais aujourd'hui, nos plus hautes autorités de ce pays aujourd'hui croient à ce genre de business. Donc ça nous encourage, ça nous réconforte. Donc sur ce, et vous voyez qu'ils sont en train même de passer dans toutes les régions pour former la jeunesse et les faire installer à eux-mêmes.
Burkina Faso and its president serve as a beacon for change by building a country that uses its resources for the betterment of its people.
Ce que vous voyez sur les réseaux sociaux, abstenez-vous déjà la première des choses de tout ce qu'on voit, c'est pas tout qui est vrai. Venez découvrir d'abord.
We have no time to reply to the people on internet, the people who are saying that your government are doing shit. We have no time because we are working. Come back in 2 or 3 years and you will see what's happened there. Just come back.
Le Burkina Faso est très beau comme pays, donc n'hésitez pas à venir visiter. Merci.
A très beau country.
You see Wakanda?
Wakanda, yeah.
Yes, we will be like Wakanda. Wakanda forever.
Woo! Wakanda forever.
I came here to understand the man at the center of it all, but I left understanding something much more valuable. Burkina Faso might just be the key to changing Africa's trajectory. And I'm glad to have experienced this and shared this story with you all. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you all on the next one. Peace.
There you have it, guys. See you next time. Bye bye for now.
Your latest availability.